Chapter 172. Of course I have to participate in the joint examination of 100 schools, Li Daochong replied with certainty. If you want to participate, then come with me to planet Qiyang. The principal of Beiyang University on planet Qiyang was my comrade in arms back in the day. He just so happens to have a spot for you to participate in the joint examination of 100 schools, Qian Chonghai replied eagerly, wishing he were already on planet Qiyang. Can I transfer my student status there? Li Daochong was a little worried. Nonsense. If you can't transfer, how can you participate in the joint examination of 100 schools? Without a student status, you can forget about participating even if the president of the federation comes. Xiaochong, I already took care of your student status when I helped you drop out of school. Although I'm old and useless, I'm not senile. You just have to follow me to planet Qiyang and go to school and cultivate. You don't have to worry about anything else. Qian Chonghai had a card up his sleeve. Li Daochong said without hesitation, Okay, then we'll go to planet Qiyang. However, Grandpa Qian, can we leave a few days later? The Emperor isn't worried, but the eunuch is. Do you think the extra spot fell from the sky? I'm afraid there will be unforeseen circumstances if we go late, Qian Chonghai complained. Grandpa Qian, it's fine as long as I can transfer schools and have a student status. It doesn't matter how many spots I have. If it really doesn't work out, I'll directly participate in the direct assessment of the education department and use the direct card to participate in the joint examination of 100 schools, Li Daochong replied easily. Qian Chonghai glared at him. Xiaochong, do you think the direct assessment is child's play? Every year, hundreds of millions of students desperately want to qualify for the joint examination of 100 schools, but even if they fail in the end and don't get a spot, very few of them participate in the direct assessment. Do you know why? Why? Li Daochong only knew that there was such a thing as a direct review. As for how the direct review would be conducted, he had no idea. A shadow appeared on Qian Chonghai's old face, and he looked like a great villain who was plotting some shocking scheme. He sneered and said in a threatening tone, because the real purpose of the direct evaluation is to temporarily send a batch of cannon fodder to the military and send them to the front lines to wear down the dark ghosts. If you survive, you'll get a direct card. Otherwise, you'll either be crippled or dead. The survival rate every year is less than 1 in 10. The 4th ring star zone has hundreds of millions of students of the right age every year, but less than 1,000 students participate in the direct evaluation. In Qian Chonghai's opinion, given Li Daochong's current situation, he would be eliminated in the first round even if he could directly get a spot to participate in the joint examination of 100 schools, let alone participate in the direct assessment. Participating in the direct evaluation was akin to courting death. Qian Chonghai didn't know the specifics of Li Daochong's situation. In his opinion, Li Daochong's spirit root had been shattered, and his life was over. These days, Qian Chonghai had been looking for connections everywhere, using all the favors he owed over the past few decades to transfer Li Daochong's student status to planet Qiyang. In the old man's opinion, he was largely responsible for Li Daochong being hit by Zhao Pani's palm. If he hadn't been careless, Zhao Pani wouldn't have been able to succeed. In addition to feeling guilty towards Li Daochong, Qian Chonghai felt even more apologetic towards the Chu girl. He had promised her that he would take good care of Li Daochong, but in the end, her only student had been crippled. Qian Chonghai blamed himself endlessly for this, but there was no medicine for regret in this world. Now that things had come to this point, all Qian Chonghai could do was do his best to make it up to Li Daochong. Even though Li Daochong's strength couldn't be compared to before, and there was no possibility of him continuing to cultivate, Qian Chonghai felt that he could still give him a taste of the joint examination of 100 schools. This way, Li Daochong could also accumulate some capital so that it would be easier for him to apply for a job at a cultivation company in the future. Given Li Daochong's current physical condition, it would be best if he could work at a large-scale, listed cultivation company after graduation. Qian Chonghai didn't notice the real changes in Li Daochong's body at all. In fact, as long as Li Daochong restrained his aura, no one below Jin Dan would be able to tell. It would have been better if Qian Chonghai hadn't explained. Instead of scaring Li Daochong, his explanation moved him a little. Wasn't the direct evaluation tailor-made for him? If he participated in the direct evaluation, it would be tantamount to giving Li Daochong a chance to cultivate like crazy before the joint examination of 100 schools. Of course, Li Daochong wouldn't say this out loud. He smiled and said, "Grandpa Qian, I'm just saying. If it really doesn't work out, I can only participate in the direct evaluation. I have some things to do, so I definitely can't leave today. Can I leave in a week?" Qian Chonghai almost jumped onto the roof. He said impatiently, "Didn't you just say 2 days? Why is it a week now?" Li Daochong said indifferently, "I'm afraid 2 days isn't enough." Qian Chonghai knew Li Daochong's personality. This kid was carved from the same mold as Chu Qianyue. They might have different personalities, but once they decided to do something, even 8 horses wouldn't be able to pull them back. "All right, I'll give you a week. I'll come pick you up in a week. That's all. Get things done as soon as possible." Qian Chonghai could only compromise. After Qian Chonghai left, Li Daochong immediately went to the underground city to find old Ghost Zhang and ask him to help buy materials for drawing spirit talismans. Spirit brains and arrays were the tools for drawing spirit talismans? There were many types of materials. Low-level spirit talismans only required yellow paper, spirit sand, and ordinary savage beast blood, but these materials were useless for spirit talismans above level 2. Spirit talismans above level 4 could no longer be bought directly on the market. They had to be made by spirit sequencers themselves. Talismans made by others would be less effective. There were tens of thousands of spirit herbs needed to make spirit talismans. The ink used to draw spirit talismans was very particular. It required a mixture of more than 10 materials. Level 5 spirit beast blood, spirit sealing graphite, mysterious liquid, aged metal powder, pine spirit juice, spirit stones, and so on. The price of each of these materials was very shocking. The starting price was 1 gram. Spirit sealing graphite ink cost 1,000 Federation coins per gram. The higher the purity, the higher the price. The best price was 10,000 per gram. Every time it was used, it would be at least 30 grams. To ordinary people, the cost of making a high-level spirit talisman was an astronomical figure that they didn't even dare to think about. If Li Daochong didn't have 90 million Federation coins, he wouldn't have planned to make a level 6 spirit talisman either. No matter how frugal he was, making a level 6 spirit talisman would require at least 2 million Federation coins. The normal cost would be around 3 million Federation coins. If one was rich, they could use better materials. This way, the spirit talisman would be more powerful, but the cost would be 4 million Federation coins. Therefore, the lowest price of a level 6 spirit talisman on the market was around 6 million Federation coins. The normal market price was around 8 million Federation coins, and the good ones were around 10 million Federation coins. However, if one wanted to buy a level 6 spirit talisman, there was almost no one on the market of a 4th-class cultivation planet like Blue Bay Star. One could only find 1 or 2 at an auction. After all, a level 6 spirit talisman could kill a chi-gathering cultivator with a wave of the hand. It could even threaten a foundation establishment cultivator. Its power could be imagined. With old Devil Zhang's help, the materials were naturally bought quickly. Li Daochong didn't let old Devil Zhang suffer a loss this time. He spent 50 million Federation coins to prepare enough materials to make 20 level 6 spirit talismans. With old Devil Zhang's help, the quality of the materials was quite good. After the purchase was completed, Li Daochong gave old Devil Zhang another 30 million Federation coins to upgrade his rainbow saber. After Li Daocheng's cultivation reached the middle stage of qi gathering, he felt that the rainbow saber was a bit light and didn't seem to be as tough as before. An Earth-step magic weapon was only 20 to 30 million Federation coins. Li Daocheng gave old Devil Zhang 30 million Federation coins, so it was naturally more than enough. Chapter 173. Old Devil Zhang had been recovering his strength for the past few days. He had absorbed all the elixirs that he had prepared. Unexpectedly, his cultivation had returned to the late stage of the qi gathering realm. For the past 20 years, old Devil Zhang's cultivation had been regressing. This was the first time this had happened. Old Devil Zhang was originally a Jin Dan stage tool refiner. After he was seriously injured, his cultivation fell, causing his tool refining skills to drop. If he could recover his cultivation, he would be able to refine a heaven stage magic weapon. Li Daocheng and old Devil Zhang agreed to pick up the saber in 5 days, so they left the underground city. After returning home, Li Daocheng went into the cultivation room and immediately began to make level 6 talismans. Li Daocheng spent an afternoon to complete the first talisman and then passed the array. He drew it on the talisman paper. Without a doubt, the first talisman failed. At midnight, the second talisman also failed. Li Daocheng couldn't help but feel some heartache when he threw 5 million into the water. Every 5 levels of a talisman was a watershed. A level 6 talisman could be said to be on another level. It was very different from the talismans that Li Daocheng had drawn before. Array patterns were much more complicated. They needed to store a large amount of spiritual energy and trigger the transformation of the elements in the world. If one didn't have the spiritual brain's high-speed calculation, it would be a huge project to find the correct path of the array pattern. If one's cultivation wasn't at the foundation establishment stage, they shouldn't even think about it. Now that he had the spiritual brain, a qi gathering stage spirit sequencer could make level 6 talismans. The failure of the first 2 talismans didn't make Li Daocheng lose confidence. Instead, it aroused his fighting spirit. Li Daocheng remembered the days when he was a programmer. After the failure of the 3rd talisman, Li Daocheng took a short break. He meditated for an hour and arranged the spiritual brain's spirit sequence a second time. For the 4th time, Li Daocheng was very careful. When everything was ready, he placed the array. A talisman paper made of golden essence grass was placed under the instrument. Holding his breath, Li Daocheng looked at the array. The instrument recorded every minute detail. Every path was the path of the array pattern that he arranged. The entire recording process took less than 5 minutes. Li Daocheng had to prepare for at least 8 hours just for these 5 minutes. Removing the completed talisman, Li Daocheng felt uneasy. He didn't know if he had succeeded or not. Immediately, a strong wave of fire elemental energy surged out, and the temperature of the entire training room rose rapidly. Li Daocheng was overjoyed. He had successfully crafted a level 6 fire symbol. With this experience, the probability of failure would be greatly reduced in the future. Li Daocheng didn't stop and immediately started programming the next spirit talisman. Soon, 4 days had passed. After Li Daocheng's first success, he didn't fail again. His speed was also getting faster and faster. In these 4 days, he had created a total of 8 level 6 spirit talismans, 4 fire talismans, 2 thunder talismans and 2 ice talismans. There were still some materials left. Li Daocheng temporarily put them away. He didn't have time to craft more talismans. He would have to wait until he reached the Scarlet Sun planet. The reason why Li Daocheng hurriedly made some LV6 talismans was so that Li Qingyao and Yin Ping could protect themselves. Out of the 8 talismans, Li Daocheng only kept 2 fire talismans for himself and gave 2 fire talismans to each of the 2 girls. He also gave all the remaining LV5 talismans to them. This time, he would be away for a long time. His father hadn't come out of seclusion yet. The cultivation of the 2 girls wasn't high. Li Qingyao was only at level 5 qi refining. Needless to say, Yinping was just at level 1 qi refining. The Zhao family, the Zhan family, Qiu Xiong, and the Li family. Li Daochong didn't feel at ease with these opponents. The two girls had level 6 spirit talismans, and they were even the strengthened version. Even if Qiu Xiong came personally, it would be hard for him to take advantage of them. In the following day, Li Daochong upgraded the spirit array in the old mansion by 2 levels. It could assist the two girls in their cultivation and also had a strong defense. After finishing, Li Daochong went to the underground city to find old Devil Zhang. This time, he was familiar with the place. Now that everyone in the Shadow Serene Square knew Li Daochong, no one dared to stop him. In addition, when Zheng Jiao saw Li Daochong, she immediately went up to him and personally brought him to find old Devil Zhang. When they arrived at old Devil Zhang's refining room, Li Daochong's calm heart fluctuated slightly. He was looking forward to the upgraded rainbow saber. Old Devil Zhang didn't keep him in suspense and directly took out the newly refined rainbow saber. When Li Daochong saw the rainbow saber, he was slightly stunned. The blade was dark green and was a bit longer than before. Originally, the blade and hilt were about 1.3 meters long. Now it was at least 1.6 meters long. If it stood upright, it could touch Li Daochong's chin. The hilt was still the same as before. It was about 35 centimeters long and the blade was 1.2 meters long. The blade's shape didn't change much, and it was about the same as before. It was just a bit longer. The blade's back was straight and the blade was sharp. It was slightly narrower at the bottom and wider at the top. There was no curve on the blade's back and the lines were rigid. The handguard was shaped like a dragon's head, and the blade extended out from the dragon's mouth. It was domineering and majestic. Brotherly, this saber is now a mid-grade earth-ranked weapon. 5 days ago, when you gave me the saber, I told you that if you could find the melted crystal, you could add the heavy silver essence crystal that you had onto this saber. I added a bit of sharp metal into the saber. Once these 3 metals fuse together, the hardness, toughness, and spirituality will all have a qualitative leap. This saber can enter the ranks of heaven-ranked weapons without any polishing. Old Devil Zhang looked at his work with satisfaction. Li Daochong nodded and put away the saber. He said thank you to old Devil Zhang and turned to leave. After Li Daochong knew that old Devil Zhang was once a Jin Dan cultivator, he didn't have the slightest doubt about his attainments in refining. This saber had been reborn and was no longer the same. The rainbow saber was like a cyan insect breaking out of its cocoon. When it broke out of its cocoon, the rainbow saber was no longer there, and Tsang ink came out. Li Daochong gave the upgraded rainbow saber a name, Tsang ink. After returning to the old house, Li Daochong didn't do anything for the remaining 2 days, and used it all to rest. Everything was basically arranged properly, and the only thing that Li Daochong was worried about was that his father, Li Tianyang, had not come out of seclusion. However, half a month ago, Li Tianyang had sent out another message, saying that he had not succeeded in cultivating a set of secret techniques, but he had gained some insights during this seclusion. His seclusion time had been extended, and he would not come out in a short period of time. Li Tianyang's seclusion this time could be said to be full of twists and turns. Originally, he said that he would only need 2 months, but now nearly 4 months had passed, and there was still no sign of him coming out. Li Daochong was full of curiosity about his father's cultivation after coming out of seclusion this time. However, he wouldn't have the chance to see it with his own eyes, because he would be leaving Blue Base Star for Red Sun Planet tomorrow. When Li Qingyao and Yinping found out that Li Daochong was going to Red Sun Planet to study, they were very supportive. They told him not to worry about his family, and that he must qualify for the joint examination of 100 schools. On the 3rd day, as soon as Qian Changhai came over, he pulled Li Daochong away, afraid that this kid would delay his departure again. As Yinping watched Li Daochong leave, tears welled up in her eyes, and she forced herself not to cry. "Young master, don't worry. I will definitely cultivate the 2 sets of techniques you gave me well," Yinping murmured with a determined look in her eyes. Qian Changhai had already booked a shuttle ticket to Red Sun Planet. At a small shuttle port in the northern suburbs of Tianyuan City, an old man and a young man boarded a small shuttle and quietly left Blue Bay Star. A day later, in the eastern suburbs of Red Sun City on Red Sun Planet, an old man and a young man stood at the entrance of Beiyang University, which had old facilities and an area of less than 10 acres. The vegetation was messy, and there were only a dozen or so low-rise buildings. Chapter 174. Beiyang University was ranked 912th out of more than 1,000 universities on the Scarlet Sun Planet. It would be a bit of an exaggeration to say that it was a third-rate university. To be precise, it was not a first-rate university. In the principal's office of Beiyang University, Young Byung-ha was introducing the school to Qian Changhai with a smile. The latter was fuming as he listened. He wanted to rush up and beat his old friend to the ground. Young Byung-ha had only told Qian Changhai that Beiyang University had a long history and had produced many famous people. The school had a deep cultural heritage and was very famous on the Scarlet Sun Planet. But when Qian Changhai arrived here, he found that it was not the case at all. The facilities in the school were old and dilapidated, and there were very few students in the school. Along the way, there was almost no one on the narrow and short main campus road. Occasionally, 1 or 2 lecturers would pass by. Their breathing was weak and they looked confused. They had not even reached the Qi-gathering realm. Young Byung-ha and Qian Changhai had joined the army together and fought on the front lines for several years. The 2 of them could be said to be friends who had gone through life and death situations together. Qian Changhai naturally trusted Young Byung-ha very much. Who would have thought that this old friend of his would also fool him? Young Byung-ha's state of mind was completely different from Qian Changhai's. After learning that his old friend was unhappy in Blue Bay Star and had even lost his retirement job, Young Byung-ha was tempted to let his old friend work at Beiyang University. Young Byung-ha knew Qian Changhai's character and ability better than anyone else. Beiyang University lacked everything, but what it lacked the most was teachers. There were only a dozen lecturers in the team, and all of them were junior lecturers. Young Byung-ha was the only professor. When Qian Changhai asked Young Byung-ha for help, he agreed to all his old friend's requests without hesitation. He only made one request, and that was to let Qian Changhai work at Beiyang University as the dean of the cultivation school. Beiyang University might not be famous, but Young Byung-ha had some skills. With his ability, there was no need for him to stay in such a university. With his Jindan cultivation, it would not be difficult for him to work at a first-rate university. The reason for letting Young Byung-ha stay at Beiyang University for 20 years was not complicated. This was his alma mater, where he met his wife, and where his dreams began. 20 years ago, his wife, who had been the dean of teaching at Beiyang University, only said one sentence to him before she passed away. If she were to live again, she would still want to meet him under the banyan tree by the May Pond at Beiyang University. Zheng Binghe had done a lot for Beiyang University in the past 20 years. However, the university's student supply had always been poor, and there was no financial allocation. A hero would be stumped by a penny. Over the years, half of the hardware and facilities of Beiyang University had been purchased by Zheng Binghe himself. Young Byung-ha still had to give lectures and teach students. He wished he could split himself in half. Unfortunately, reality was cruel. Without good conditions, no good lecturers would be willing to work, and talented students would be even less likely to apply. Year after year, it was a vicious cycle. Young Byung-ha could not do anything, but it was not that he did not have any results. 20 years ago, Beiyang University was almost downgraded to a junior college, but Young Byung-ha supported this abandoned university bit by bit. From planet Crimson Sun to the top, it rose by more than 100 places. More than 100 years ago, Beiyang University was ranked in the top 5 on planet Crimson Sunday. When Yung Byung-ha entered the university, it was also one of the top 10 universities. Of course, that was 80 or 90 years ago. 70 years ago, the principal of Beiyang University was also Zheng Binghe's teacher. Because of his upright and unyielding character, he offended the Deputy Minister of Education of the Fourth Ring Starfield. Since then, Beiyang University began to decline. The territory of the school was constantly shrinking, and the financial allocation was shrinking year by year. Any lecturer who taught at Beiyang University would be put in a difficult position when they took the qualification exam, and their promotion was almost blocked. Many talented students were pulled away by other schools with good treatment. In less than 10 years, Beiyang University rapidly declined on planet Crimson Sun and soon walked out of people's sight. Nowadays, almost no one knew that there was such a former Federation's Project 199 school in Crimson Sun City. Yung Byung-ha spoke frankly for half an hour, ignoring his old friend's gloomy and unhappy expression. Brother Chang-hai, this is the basic situation of the university. If you have any questions, you can ask me directly. From tomorrow onwards, you will be the dean of Beiyang University's cultivation school. You have the final say in all matters of the cultivation school, and I can't interfere. If there are no questions, you can go to the Human Resources Department to fill in a few forms and go through the admission procedures. Let's have a good drink tonight, Yung Byung-ha said with a smile. Qian Chang-hai was seething with anger, but he was already here and all the procedures had been completed. He had already boarded the pirate ship, and it was impossible to get off now. Qian Chang-hai had no interest in being the dean of the cultivation school at all. The reason he had agreed to Yung Byung-ha's appointment was so that Li Daochong could transfer to Beiyang University. It was just that after so long, Yung Byung-ha hadn't mentioned a single word about Li Daochong's transfer. All he had talked about was the school situation and the progress of teaching. His attention was completely focused on Qian Chang-hai's appointment. Bing-ha, you know why I'm here this time. Qian Chang-hai saw that Yung Byung-ha was about to end the conversation, so he cut to the chase. However, he was interrupted as soon as he spoke. Chang-hai, I've already done what I promised you. This little brother's student status and transfer have already been settled. He can come to school directly tomorrow. After you take up the post, you'll be the dean of the cultivation school. You can make the arrangements for this little brother as you see fit. There's no need to ask me, Yung Byung-ha said straightforwardly. Other than greeting Li Daochong and shaking hands when they first met, Yung Byung-ha had completely forgotten about Li Daochong after that and focused all his attention on his old friend. Yung Byung-ha wanted Qian Chang-hai. As for Li Daochong, his old friend had merely come over with an additional condition. Li Daochong's situation had already been explained clearly to Yung Byung-ha when Qian Chang-hai had contacted him. Yung Byung-ha deeply sympathized with Li Daochong's broken spirit root. Other than feeling pity, there was nothing he could do. Without reaching the soul formation stage, it was impossible to repair a broken spirit root. Yung Byung-ha even advised Qian Chang-hai not to blame himself. Everyone had their own ups and downs. It could only be said that Li Daochong was destined to suffer this calamity. Yung Byung-ha seemed to be relatively cold towards Li Daochong. It wasn't that he looked down on Li Daochong, but that he had too many things on his hands. In any case, Qian Chang-hai was already the dean of the cultivation school, and he was the one who had brought Li Daochong here. Naturally, he would make the appropriate arrangements, and there was no need for Yung Byung-ha to worry about him. After hearing Yung Byung-ha's words, Qian Chang-hai finally understood his old friend's intentions. He didn't ask any more questions and brought Li Daochong to complete the procedures. After the procedures were completed, Li Daochong officially became a second-year transfer student at Beiyang University. Qian Chonghai also became the dean of the Cultivation School of Beiyang University. Qian Chonghai originally wanted to give Li Daochong some preferential treatment, but Li Daochong refused. Faced with a new environment, Li Daochong's mood immediately became very relaxed. Beiyang University's conditions were far inferior to Xiansong University, but everything here gave Li Daochong a very simple feeling. Chapter 175. It had been 2 months since he came to Beiyang University. Li Daochong's daily life was very regular. He went to class on time in the morning, stayed in the library at noon, practiced basic skills in the training hall in the afternoon, and returned to the dormitory at night. Li Daochong would study the Great Void Sword technique for a while. Before Chu Qianhua left, she told Li Daochong not to cultivate before he reached the qi-gathering stage. Now that Li Daochong was in the middle stage of the qi-gathering stage, he naturally had the conditions to cultivate. However, Li Daochong still did not dare to cultivate, because after he read the Great Void Sword technique, the hot-blooded upgrader incorporated this heaven-level technique into the system. Li Daochong only needed to confirm the cultivation, and this heaven-level technique could be completed in an instant. When he first cultivated the 9 splits saber technique, Li Daochong almost couldn't bear it. The Great Void Sword technique was many times more powerful than the 9 splits saber technique. After flipping through it, Li Daochong was fully aware of the power of this cultivation technique. Even the simplest move contained profound mysteries. Li Daochong had not completely cultivated the 9 splits saber technique so far. Although the hot-blooded upgrader could let Li Daochong learn it in an instant, there were still limitations. In fact, the 9 splits saber technique had a total of 9 saber technique. After Li Daochong confirmed the cultivation of these 9 saber techniques, he had indeed completed all of them. However, completing the cultivation did not mean that he could perform it. At that time, Li Daochong was only in the qi refining realm and could only perform the 3rd level. When he was at the peak of the qi refining realm, he could barely perform the 4th level of the heaven-shattering slash. The 9 splits saber technique that Li Daochong obtained was actually not complete. There were only 4 moves recorded on it. At first, Li Daochong only thought that the strongest move of the 9 splits saber technique was the 4th level of the heaven-shattering slash. However, when his cultivation broke through the qi-gathering stage and rose to the middle stage of the qi-gathering stage, the 5th level of the saber technique, the star slash slash, and the 6th level of the saber technique, the sun slash slash, surfaced. After the hot-blooded upgrader absorbed the 9 split saber technique, it completed the incomplete parts. There were still 7, 8, and 9 levels left. Li Daochong would only be able to comprehend the 7th layer after leveling up again. According to the rules, Li Daochong would only be able to reach the 9th layer after reaching the early stage of foundation establishment. In other words, the hot-blooded upgrader could complete the incomplete scroll, and it could also be cultivated in one go. However, if one wanted to display all the mysteries of the cultivation method, one had to be at the same cultivation level. Otherwise, even if one learned it, they would not be able to use it. To put it simply, if you had a rock in your hand, you had to have enough strength to throw it. If you didn't have enough strength, the rock would just stay in your hand. It would just be a rock, and could not be used as an offensive weapon. The greater the strength of the throw, the greater the power of the thrown stone. Li Daochong was not in a hurry to learn the Great Void swordsmanship, since he had not finished practicing the 9 cracks saber technique. It would not be too late to practice it after he succeeded in Zhuji realm. In the past 2 months, apart from consolidating his cultivation step by step, Li Daochong had also made some new friends. There were only more than 3,000 students at Beiyang University, which was a world of difference compared to Xiansong University's Cultivation College, which had 5,000 to 6,000 students. Beiyang University also had fewer majors. There were only 3 colleges and 1 department, namely the Cultivation College, the Spiritual Brain College, the Spiritual Mechanical Engineering College, and the Refining Department. The Cultivation College had the largest number of students, with a total of 1,580 students in 4th grade. Li Daochong was in Class 2 of the Cultivation College, which was also the only elite class among the 8 classes in the entire grade. Due to the lack of students, Beiyang University did not open a superclass because there were no students of that level. The most powerful in the elite class was only at the 10th level of Qi refinement. In the second year of Xiansong University's elite class, the 10th level of Qi refinement could only be ranked in the lower middle level. However, in Beiyang, the 10th level of Qi refinement was relatively powerful, and their family background was relatively better. It wasn't that there were no rich children in Beiyang University, and there were quite a few of them. About half of the elite class came from good families. They were here for the 2 reference spots of Beiyang University. According to Beiyang University's level, there shouldn't be any spots. However, 15 years ago, Yong Byung-ha was invited to participate in a frontline encirclement and suppression operation and made contributions. The military rewarded him based on his contributions. Yong Byung-ha should have taken this opportunity to leave Beiyang for a better development opportunity, but he gave up on the reward and asked for 2 reference spots in the joint examination of 100 schools, and only allowed students from Beiyang University to use them. At that time, the lieutenant general of the Beijing army thought that there was something wrong with this old man's head, but in the end, he still agreed to Yong Byung-ha's request. This was also the origin of the reference spots that Qian Chonghai had mentioned to Li Daochong. It was precisely because of these 2 spots that the number of applicants for Beiyang University gradually increased. However, due to the weak teaching staff and dilapidated hardware, it was still unable to attract too many students. The main thing was that these 2 spots didn't directly allow one to enter the finals. It was just a qualification. The joint examination of 100 schools first had to pass the written test, then enter the 10,000 ghost array. The final test was the Bloody Battle Cemetery. For students without strength, the final test was a nightmare. There were no rules, no restrictions, and life and death were up to fate. Riches and honor were up to the heavens. Other than giving up, there was no other way to leave the cemetery. Giving up meant losing the qualification to enter the Big Four. There were only 2 ways to enter the final test directly. One was to become the first in their cultivation planet, and the other was to participate in the direct test and obtain a direct card. In addition, one could only start with the written test and the 10,000 ghost array. If one couldn't pass it, they wouldn't be able to participate in the final test. The Federation had also put in a lot of effort to cultivate future generals who could resist the Hades. If not for this, how could there be such a peaceful life in the rear? Li Daochong had made a few new friends in the 2 months since he had entered the school. Tan Shiyuan was his deskmate, and Xiahou Quan was his best friend. Tan Shiyuan's family background was not bad, and it could be considered a small family on planet Qiyang. This kid had some talent, but he wasn't very talented. The family felt that if he entered a good school, he probably wouldn't even be able to get into the joint examination of 100 schools. They might as well send him to Beiyang University to try his luck. Maybe he could get a spot and qualify for the joint examination of 100 schools. Xiahou Quan's family background wasn't bad, but it couldn't be considered a family. His parents were low-level officials under Planet Qiyang's local government. His father was the deputy mayor of a county, and his mother was the county's street clerk. Tan Shiyuan was content with his small fortune. His family had high hopes for him, but he only thought about how to pick up girls all day long and didn't pay much attention to cultivation. With a bit of cleverness and the resources provided by his family, he finally reached the 9th level of Qi refinement. These 2 kids were always thinking about where to go after school and had no interest in cultivation. Originally, Tan Shiyuan wasn't interested in Li Daochong either. He wasn't a girl. However, a few days later, during the written test, Tan Shiyuan was almost caught cheating. He threw away the cheating slip. Just as the invigilator was about to discover it, Li Daochong stepped on it and narrowly avoided it. After this incident, Tan Shiyuan felt that Li Daochong, this transfer student, was very loyal, so he took the initiative to get close to him. Li Daochong was unfamiliar with this place, and needed a friend or two in the form of a guide. Since Tan Shiyuan wanted to be friends with him, he wouldn't reject him. Chapter 176. For more than a month, Tan Shiyuan had invited Li Daochong more than once to go out and have fun, but Li Daochong had declined. However, during this time, Li Daochong's cultivation had been completely consolidated, and after this period of time, the spirit energy had also had an effect on the body's nourishment. Previously, Li Daochong's jade bones had turned into spirit muscles, and his outer skin and inner bones had become spirit bodies, but the flesh and internal organs in the middle had not yet formed. For the past 2 months, every night, Li Daochong only did one thing, and that was to nourish his body with spirit energy and refine his blood and flesh. Normal cultivators had to train their bodies, and then use spirit medicine to repair their bodies, and then use a good cultivation method to refine their bodies. Li Daochong did not need to go through so much trouble, and he only needed to nourish his body with spirit energy. As early as a week ago, Li Daochong's blood had been purified into Xian blood, and his organs had gradually entered the strengthening stage. As long as he absorbed enough soul power, Li Daochong could enter the later stage of qi gathering. In addition, Li Daochong also wanted to accumulate some soul power to exchange for the melted crystal mentioned by old Ghostjong, and upgrade the Tsang ink saber again. Li Daochong was not interested in the 2 places of Beiyang University. He wanted to participate in the direct test, get the direct card, and directly enter the final test. Qian Chonghai had looked for Li Daochong several times to ask him to participate in the test of Beiyang University. When the time came, he would be given a place, but Li Daochong did not sign up. Qian Chonghai thought that Li Daochong had not come out of the haze of his spirit root shattering, so he did not dare to excessively provoke him. After persuading him a few times, he saw that Li Daochong did not move, so he could only give up. Li Daochong didn't understand the situation in Scarlet Sun City at all. He had thought of looking for the Yin clan before, but he felt that it was better not to trouble them. Li Daochong had already troubled them once for Qiao Shima's matter, and the Yin clan resolved Qiao Shima's matter without a second thought. No matter how powerful the Yin family was, it was still very troublesome to deal with this matter. The Federation absolutely prohibited the sale of immortal herbs. The crime of selling immortal herbs was even more serious than killing cultivators. If caught, there would be a heavy sentence. If the amount exceeded a certain amount, they would be killed without mercy. Li Daochong was not a person who liked to trouble others, so he did not contact the Yin clan when he arrived at the Scarlet Sun planet. For the past few days, Li Daochong had been thinking of going to Scarlet Sun City to see if there were any places like the Blue Bay Stars underground city where he could buy dark ghosts that could erase their soul sense. If he went out, he would be like a headless fly, and it might not even be effective. Li Daochong was wondering if he should hire a guide on the spirit intranet to take him around when Tan Shiyuan came over to make a fuss. Li Daochong did not refuse this time and readily agreed. Tan Shiyuan was born and raised in Scarlet Sun City, so he was naturally familiar with the place. Buying dark ghosts was a sensitive matter, so Li Daochong naturally could not ask Tan Shiyuan directly. He wanted to see if he could indirectly find any clues in the conversation. Li Daochong had been very low-key in the 2 months since he transferred here. No matter what happened, he would not be in the limelight. There was no need for him to do so either. He would only pass his exams and never score more than 1 mark. Li Daochong became the person who was ignored, and this was the effect he wanted to achieve. After class, Tan Shiyuan and Xiahou Quan pulled Li Daochong out of the school gate. It was still early, only a little over 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There was still some time before dinner. Tan Shiyuan drove his flashy convertible flying shuttle and drove Li Daochong and Xiahou Quan towards the center of Scarlet Sun City. Tan Shiyuan spoke with assurance along the way, introducing Li Daochong to the scenic spots and history of Scarlet Sun City. Half an hour later, the three of them arrived at a spirit tea house called Chasing Moon in the Scarlet Cloud district of Scarlet Sun City. The important people that Tan Shiyuan had mentioned were already waiting there. However, Li Daochong had already learned that the important people were actually a group of students with good family backgrounds. They were all Tan Shiyuan's high school classmates. There were both males and females, and all of them were wearing expensive robes. When Tan Shiyuan arrived, they were already there. They were sitting around a table by the window, chatting and laughing as they waited. There were a total of 5 people, 2 males and 3 females. Tan Shiyuan introduced Li Daochong to everyone as soon as he arrived. However, these 5 young people lost interest in him after sizing up Li Daochong's attire. One of the girls even looked at Tan Shiyuan with resentment. Why did he bring such a poor kid here? The 2 males were called Qing Jiahao and Chen Wei. Their family backgrounds were quite good, and they were even better off than Tan Shiyuan. The Qing family was a mid-tier family in Scarlet Sun City. Their strength was about the same as Zhang Honglia's family in Tianyuan City. Chen Wei was slightly inferior, and his family was in the business of spiritual machinery engineering. The 3 girls were quite good-looking, and they were wearing the most fashionable clothes. They were revealing but not revealing, and they were youthful and beautiful. One of the girls was called Tian Meng. She was a girl that Tan Shiyuan was pursuing recently. Tan Shiyuan was treating them today mainly because of her. The other 2 girls were called Huang Jiaran and Su Rongrong. Their family backgrounds were also quite good. After Tan Shiyuan finished the introductions, he sat beside Tian Meng and began to fawn over her. He did not care about Li Daochong anymore. Xiahou Quan knew this group of people from the beginning, so he naturally communicated with them smoothly. After Li Daochong sat down, no one paid any attention to him. He did not care either. He looked at the busy traffic outside the window, and the cultivators on swords flying across the sky from time to time. The Scarlet Sun City was even more prosperous than the Tianyuan City. Although the Scarlet Sun planet was a Grade 4 cultivation planet like the Indigo Bay planet, the Scarlet Sun planet was one of the top Grade 4 cultivation planets and had the potential to become a Grade 3 cultivation planet. At the table, besides Li Daochong, the girl called Huang Jiaran was also silent. Huang Jiaran was the most outstanding one among the 3 girls. She had clear and bright pupils, curved Lu Mei, long eyelashes, fair skin, and a cold face. When Li Daochong saw Huang Jiaran for the first time, she reminded him of his master, Chu Qianyue. The 2 women didn't have any similarities in appearance, but their expressions were somewhat similar. Chu Qianyue also always had this ice-cold appearance. Of course, there was a difference between Huang Jiaran and Chu Qianyue's coldness. Li Daochong did not care about Huang Jiaran at first. Li Daochong was not interested in whether she talked or thought about anything. However, after sitting down for a few minutes, Li Daochong faintly felt a trace of Yin Hel Qi. It was very weak. Even though Li Daochong was very sensitive to death qi, it took him a long time to feel it. Li Daochong looked at Huang Jiaran in the direction of the death qi. Then he shrouded her with his psyche power. Li Daochong frowned. Black resentment binding spirit? Red Sun planet produced this thing? After probing, Li Daochong found that the black resentment binding spirit in Huang Jiaran's body had just been possessed for less than 3 months. Seeing Li Daochong staring at Huang Jiaran, Xiahou Quan leaned closer and whispered, "Daochong, although Huang Jiaran is beautiful, don't think too much. She is not someone you can touch. The strongest family here is the Huang family. Not only that, Huang Jiaran has many pursuers." Tan Shiyuan is a guy who drools when he sees a beauty, but he is very honest in front of Huang Jiran. Jin Wenqing, who will come later, is Huang Jiran's loyal pursuer. Not to mention the Jin family's strength, Jin Wenqing is an expert in the qi-gathering realm. Don't provoke him. Li Daochong continued to look at Huang Jiran as if he did not hear Xiahou Quan's words. As soon as Xiahou Quan finished speaking, he said, "Miss Huang, have you been feeling cold recently? Have you been unable to concentrate during meditation?" In fact, when the black resentment binding spirit possessed a person, there was no uniform symptom. Everyone was different. Otherwise, it would be easy to be discovered. Li Daochong knew about it because he checked Huang Jiran's pulse with his psyche power. As soon as Li Daochong finished speaking, the table of people who were talking and laughing suddenly stopped. They all looked at Li Daochong with strange expressions. Su Rongrong and the others looked like they were waiting to watch a good show. They knew Huang Jiran's personality too well. Even Jin Wenqing, who was so well off, was often bored, let alone a poor boy. A toad lusting after a swan's meat. He must be crazy. Moreover, he could even say such a vulgar thing. It was simply laughable. How did you know? Huang Jiran retracted her gaze from the window and looked at Li Daochong with surprise in her eyes. Chapter 177. Huang Jiran stared at Li Daochong. This was the first time she had looked at him since Li Daochong had arrived. Huang Jiran did not look down on Li Daochong because of his shabby clothes. She was indifferent by nature, even more so when it came to the opposite sex. If not for her good friend Su Rongrong forcing her to come today, she would not have come. Once she heard that Jin Wenqing was coming, Huang Jiran would frown unnaturally. Jin Wenqing's pursuit of her was getting more and more intense. Huang Jiran dreamed of becoming a 5-star spiritualist. What was a spiritualist? Simply put, it was a singer on earth. Huang Jiran focused all her attention on her studies, and was not interested in anything else. However, in recent months, Huang Jiran felt that something was wrong with her body. When she went to the hospital for a checkup, the doctor said that there was no problem. Huang Jiran did not care at first, but as time went by, she began to have problems even when she was cultivating. She could not concentrate during meditation. Huang Jiran did not mention this to anyone. She went to the hospital alone for a checkup. Therefore, when Li Daochong hit the nail on the head, Huang Jiran could not help but be surprised. She could not help but be curious about this young man in front of her. How did he know? Aside from Li Daochong, the rest of the people at the table were all too familiar with Huang Jiran, this cold beauty's personality. She was an otherworldly woman. Not to mention men, even women would find it difficult to talk to her, let alone be stared at by Huang Jiran. Huang Jiran would never stare at a man. However, at this moment, this cold beauty was staring at Li Daochong. Everyone at the table was surprised. Su Rongrong asked curiously, "Jiran, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well recently?" Huang Jiran was still staring at Li Daochong. She did not answer Su Rongrong's question. Then she stood up, walked to Li Daochong, and reached out to pull him up. Tan Shiyuan looked at Li Daochong with his mouth agape. He thought, what kind of magic did this guy use to make goddess Huang Jiran pull him up? Tan Shiyuan could not understand. Qing Jiahao and Chen Wei were even more confused. Su Rongrong and Tianmeng were even more incredulous. One had to know that Jin Wenqing was a handsome young master with a good family background. Huang Jiran did not even look him in the eye. How? With this poor guy. With just a few words. He seems to know the problem. We'll be back. Right. After saying that, Huang Jiran pulled Li Daochong upstairs. There was a large flat balcony on the second floor. One could drink tea in the open air. But at this time, there were very few people drinking tea. There was no one on the balcony. The reason why Huang Jiran was so anxious was that her body's problem had spread to her throat. When she sang, her voice would become hoarse. These days, in addition to the regular hospitals, she also went to the ancient medical clinics. They also could not diagnose her. No one could say it was right. But this young man could tell the symptoms just by looking at her. Her throat was Huang Jiran's lifeblood. How could she not be anxious? Because of this, Huang Jiran did not care about anything else. She pulled Li Daochong and ran. Just as they were going upstairs, a young man wearing a cloud jade robe came in. He saw Huang Jiran pulling a man up to the second floor. The young man was Jin Wenqing, who had been pursuing Huang Jiran for a year. This scene made him seethe with anger. He wanted to kill the man who was being pulled by Huang Jiran. But he knew Huang Jiran's personality very well. Naturally, he would not do such a rude thing in front of her. Jin Wenqing walked to the table with a gloomy face and sat down. The others did not dare to speak. Su Rongrong and Tian Meng knew Jin Wenqing's personality too well. At this time, it was best not to provoke him, or they would get into trouble. Tan Shiyuan and Xiaohuquan looked at each other and didn't dare to say anything. However, they began to feel nervous. Jin Wenqing was famous for being jealous. He would definitely ask who Huang Jiran had pulled just now. If he knew that it was them who had brought Huang Jiran here, they didn't dare to imagine whether Jin Wenqing would vent his anger on them. At this time, Tan Shiyuan's intestines were green with regret. Was there something wrong with his brain today? Why did he think of dragging Li Daochong here? At this time, on the platform on the second floor, Li Daochong said a very mysterious explanation. Huang Jiran listened in confusion. He only knew that he should have some kind of chronic disease. If it was not treated in time, as time passed, his body would only get worse and worse, and his cultivation would also fall. Huang Jiran was frightened. How do you know so much about this strange disease? You know how to treat it? Li Daochong was not a person who liked to meddle in other people's business. Everyone had their own fate. But the girl in front of him reminded him of Chu Qianyue, which made Li Daochong involuntarily want to help her. Li Daochong was silent for a while and said, "My family has been practicing medicine for generations. Although it is not an aristocratic family, we have done a lot of research on ancient medicine. My grandfather left behind a medical record. When I saw you, I guessed that you had this disease. But you don't have to panic. Your disease is not very serious. I only need to use ancient medicine to cure you." Really? Huang Jiran could not believe it. Really? Give me your hand. Li Daochong stretched out his hand. Huang Jiran did not hesitate and directly stretched out her crystal-clear white slender hand. Li Daochong took advantage of the opportunity to hold her hand. When Huang Jiran and Li Daochong's hands touched, Huang Jiran's face turned red. She wanted to withdraw her hand, but she resisted and did not move. Just a second later, Huang Jiran's face turned red and was replaced by a touch of surprise. A warm qi flowed into Huang Jiran's body. After a while, the indescribable chill in her body immediately disappeared. Li Daochong was able to destroy the black resentment binding spirit when he was in the third level of qi refining. Now that he was in the middle stage of qi gathering, the black resentment binding spirit was like an ant. Although it could be cured in an instant, Li Daochong still delayed for a while. Otherwise, it would be too fake. He let his spiritual qi go around Huang Jiran's body and repaired all the damage caused by the cold qi. Puff! Huang Jiran spat out a mouthful of black water and immediately felt much better. When Li Daochong let go of Huang Jiran's hand, the latter gratefully asked, "Thank you. How much is the treatment fee?" Li Daochong waved his hand and said, "Your expression is very similar to an old friend of mine. The treatment fee is waived." After saying that, Li Daochong turned around and went downstairs. Huang Jiran stared at Li Daochong's back. Her cherry-red lips pursed. She could not help but feel a little embarrassed. Li Daochong's words made Huang Jiran's thoughts a little crooked. There were too many people who pursued her. Li Daochong's words just now were also similar to what Li Daochong had said. This made her mistakenly think that Li Daochong also wanted to win her favor. Huang Jian suddenly felt a bit of pressure in her heart. After all, the situation was different from other pursuers. If she still ignored him, wouldn't she be suspected of being ungrateful? Li Daochong naturally did not know what Huang Jian was thinking. He helped Huang Jian because he remembered Chu Qianyue. As for what Huang Jian looked like, he had already forgotten. After Li Daochong went downstairs, he returned to his seat. Huang Jian also followed him downstairs. But the atmosphere at the table was a little strange. Li Daochong had just sat down when Jin Wenqing asked with a smile, "Who is this friend? Does anyone know?" Chapter 178. Of course, Jin Wenqing asked this on purpose. Among the people at the table, only Li Daochong was dressed shabbily. Even the worst of the others were wearing red sun planets branded robes that cost at least tens of thousands of dollars. Li Daochong's clothes couldn't be more ordinary. It was a very simple training suit without any spirit energy or spirit array fluctuations. The material was just a little elastic and tough. It could be bought at the night market for no more than 500 Federation coins. Foreigner? Which cultivation planet? Jin Wenqing continued to ask. Quicksand planet, Qing Jiahao replied with a bit of sarcasm. When Li Daochong entered the school, there was a slight change to his information. Qian Chonghai did this to protect Li Daochong. He didn't want the Zhao family and Qiu Xiong to know about Li Daochong's specific whereabouts. Of course, the most important thing was to avoid the deputy director of the education department, Yu Boming, and the assistant director of the education department, Su Yuliang. If these two people knew about Li Daochong's specific whereabouts, they might secretly obstruct him. Qian Chonghai knew this very well. Qian Chonghai paid the price of a drop of yang essence liquid. This was a precious drop of spirit liquid that he won from his old rival. He was going to save it for when he went to 13 Specter. However, in order to help Li Daochong settle down, the old man was willing to pay the price. This kind of slight change to the information that didn't violate the Federation's laws was something that many people were willing to do as long as they were willing to pay. Li Daochong's birthplace was changed to Quicksand Planet, a fifth-class cultivation planet outside the fifth ring of the Federation's star field. Quicksand Planet? Jin Wenqing was stunned for a moment. He had never heard of this place. Qing Jiahao leaned close to Jin Wenqing's ear and whispered a few words. The latter nodded with a very surprised expression. At first, Jin Wenqing thought that one couldn't judge a book by its cover. He had experienced many things since he was young and had met many experts. Therefore, Jin Wenqing knew that he shouldn't underestimate anyone. Even if he was angry, he had to ask about the other party's background. Jin Wenqing knew Huang Jian's character very well. Therefore, when she pulled a man upstairs, besides feeling jealous, his first reaction was that this person wasn't simple. However, after a few questions, the doubts in Jin Wenqing's heart dissipated, and his gloomy expression turned bright and clear. A fifth-class cultivation planet kid wanted to snatch Jin Wenqing's woman? It's a little funny. Tianmeng was a little woman who wanted to curry favor with the rich and powerful. She wanted to curry favor with Jin Wenqing so badly that she wanted to devote her life to him. Moreover, she could give up her status. Unfortunately, in Jin Wenqing's eyes, she was just a piece of trash. However, Tianmeng would still try her best to please Jin Wenqing whenever she had the chance. She said in a sarcastic tone, "Tan Chiyuan, why did you bring just anyone? Don't you know that today is a high-end party?" Tan Chiyuan wanted to seal Tianmeng's mouth, but he couldn't control her. He could only look at Li Daochong apologetically, telling him not to be angry. Li Daochong wouldn't argue with a snobbish little girl. He didn't care about Tianmeng's words at all. Li Daochong's heart was only focused on cultivation. Nothing else could stir up his emotions. Li Daochong recently found that his cultivation speed could be increased by another level. As long as he had enough soul power, He could reach the peak of Qi gathering stage without any obstacles. In Li Daocheng's eyes, the group of people were just a bunch of kids. His purpose here was just to walk around and have a better understanding of Scarlet Sun City. The strongest one was Jin Wenqing, who had just entered the early stage of Qi gathering stage. Moreover, he was older than Li Daocheng. There was no need to talk about the others. Qing Jiahao was at Qi refining stage 10. Chen Wei was at Qi refining stage 9. They were weaker than Tan Shiyuan. There was no need to talk about the cultivation of the girls. The strongest one was Huang Jiaran, who was at Qi refining stage 11. However, she was not a combat cultivator. She was a sound cultivator. In Li Daocheng's eyes, these people were just a bunch of mortals. Perhaps Li Daocheng's cultivation was not that terrifying, as he was only at the middle stage of the Qi gathering realm, which was only one stage higher than Jin Wenqing. However, Li Daocheng's strength was far beyond the middle stage of Qi gathering stage. Even a peak stage Qi gathering stage cultivator might not be enough in front of Li Daocheng. The strength of one's cultivation didn't determine one's strength. Perhaps in most cases, the stronger one's cultivation was, the stronger one's strength. However, this wasn't an iron law. If one's cultivation was weak but their strength was strong, this was the true terror. Whether Li Daocheng was a genius or not, he didn't know. However, after obtaining the hot-blooded level-up tool, any genius would not be surprising in his eyes. In Li Daocheng's eyes, Tian Meng wasn't worth mentioning. If it weren't for Tan Shiyuan's face, he would have already punished her with a telekinesis attack. Meng, don't be so impolite. How can you speak like that? While the others were waiting to see how Li Daocheng would react, Huang Jiaran's displeased expression was heard. The people at the table were stunned once again. What was wrong with Huang Jiaran today? Jin Wenqing's originally relaxed expression flashed with a sinister expression. Huang Jiaran had never defended him before. Today, she actually spoke out to defend a brat from the countryside. Tian Meng pursed her lips and didn't say anything. She didn't dare to have a conflict with Huang Jiaran. Not to mention the Huang clan's strength, once Jin Wenqing acted up, no one would be able to stop him. He might even slap her on the spot. Seeing that the atmosphere wasn't right, Tan Shiyuan braced himself and said, "It's getting late. Let's go to the hotel. Pure Gold Hotel, room 309. It's not too far from here." After speaking, Tan Shiyuan stood up. However, even though he stood up, the others remained seated. Clearly, his influence was far from enough. Tan Shiyuan wanted to cry but had no tears. Just as he didn't know what to do, Huang Jiaran stood up. Almost at the same time, Li Daocheng also stood up. This tacit understanding was as if they had made an appointment. Jin Wenqing's lungs were about to explode from anger. However, with a beauty in front of him, he couldn't lose his temper. Jin Wenqing still had this bit of patience. He smiled slightly and stood up gracefully. "I'm hungry too. Let's go." As soon as Jin Wenqing spoke, the others immediately stood up and walked out of the tea-house. Tan Shiyuan's worried face finally calmed down. He whispered to Li Daocheng, "Daocheng, don't take Tian Meng's words to heart. This girl is used to being arrogant since she was young. She doesn't think before she speaks. Don't take it to heart. Women have long hair but short knowledge. If she speaks nonsense again during dinner later, watch how I'll deal with her." Li Daocheng didn't have a good impression of this group of people. He planned to tell Tan Shiyuan that he would leave first and walk around by himself. He wouldn't go for dinner so as to avoid making things difficult for him. After Tan Shiyuan said that, Li Daocheng didn't know what to say. Pure Gold Hotel was one of the top hotels in Qiyang City. Even with Tan Shiyuan's ability, it was still painful for him to book a private room here. When they arrived at the hotel, the awkward atmosphere eased a little. However, everyone seemed to have a tacit understanding to ignore Li Daocheng. They were afraid of offending Jin Wenqing. After entering the private room, Jin Wenqing frowned. Chiyuan, what kind of lousy private room did you book? This is a low-end private room for individual customers. Follow me to the 5th floor. I'm a member here. After Jin Wenqing said that, Tan Chiyuan was worried. The 3rd floor was the limit of what he could afford. Any higher and he wouldn't be able to afford it. Chiyuan, you can treat us another day. I'll be the host tonight. Jin Wenqing glanced at Huang Jiran inadvertently as he spoke. Tan Chiyuan heaved a sigh of relief. When they reached the 5th floor, a man in a suit immediately came up to them. He nodded and bowed to Jin Wenqing and brought them into a private room. Once they entered, Tian Meng let out a gasp of surprise. This wasn't a private room, it was a magnificent palace. Young Master Jin, you're a member here. Tian Meng exclaimed. Su Rongrong rolled her eyes at Tian Meng. Don't be surprised. Young Master Jin has always been a gold member of Pure Gold Hotel. Chapter 179. Li Daochong was amused by Jin Wenqing's look, but his expression didn't change. He turned a blind eye to the magnificent private room. He came because of Tan Chiyuan and Huang Jiran. When they left the tea house, Huang Jiran also apologized to Li Daochong and asked him not to bicker with Tian Meng. With the improvement of his cultivation and strength, Li Daochong's temperament had changed significantly. It was not an exaggeration to say that his heart was as still as water. After entering the private room, everyone sat down. Jin Wenqing sat in the main seat. Huang Jiran was arranged to sit on his left. Qing Jiahao sat on his right. The others sat in rows. Almost no one showed any interest in Li Daochong. It was only after Tan Chiyuan pulled him to sit down. Tan Chiyuan's actions made Li Daochong's impression of this kid increase a lot. Although this kid was not ambitious and loved to play, he didn't dislike Li Daochong in this situation. He was a friend that could only be made. Li Daochong knew that Tan Chiyuan's treatment of him might offend Jin Wenqing and the others, but he didn't care. Tan Chiyuan's performance today was enough to make Li Daochong a friend. After a while, exquisite dishes made of various spirit beasts and spirit herbs were served. Several bottles of expensive red fruit spirit wine were opened, and the rich fragrance immediately filled the entire private room. Looking at the table full of spirit dishes, Tian Meng's eyes lit up. Wow, isn't that red flame flood dragon meat? Jin Wenqing smiled and said, Meng has good eyesight. It is red flame flood dragon meat. Eating a piece has the effect of strengthening the body. Long-term consumption is very helpful for cultivation and can strengthen the body. The table full of people drooled as they looked at the table full of dishes. Jin Wenqing raised his cup and said a few words, and the others couldn't wait to start eating. While the others were chatting and laughing, Li Daochong didn't say a word and just ate. It would be a waste not to eat. Li Daochong didn't care about Jin Wenqing's attitude towards him, and he wouldn't refuse to eat just because it was Jin Wenqing's treat. In the eyes of the others, Li Daochong's behavior was like a country bumpkin who had just entered the city. Seeing so many spiritual vegetables, he couldn't wait to eat and drink and pack them up. When Jin Wenqing saw Li Daochong acting like this, he was overjoyed. Country bumpkin, you should continue acting so that Ran can see your true colors. After a few cups of wine, everyone was in high spirit. At this time, a charming woman wearing a fiery red robe came in from outside. When Jin Wenqing saw her, he hurriedly stood up and introduced her to everyone. This woman was the general manager of the Pure Gold Hotel, Ren Lan. The outside world called her Sister Lan, and she was also an influential figure in Scarlet Sun City. Sister Lan personally came to propose a toast, so Jin Wenqing naturally felt honored. He drank 3 glasses in a row, and the others all followed suit. Only Li Daochong just showed a little bit of respect and continued to eat. After a round of toasting, 3 bottles of red spirit wine were gone just like that. They were worth at least 20,000 Federation coins. After Sister Lan left, Qing Jiao's face was flushed red, and he said excitedly, Brother Jean, thanks to you, I was able to meet this Scarlet Sun City's famous lady. I heard that Sister Lan has a strong background, and she is the woman of Scarlet Sun City's big boss, Boss Een. The outside world also heard that Boss E is one of the two tigers of Scarlet Sun City's underground forces, and the other is the Shadow Secluded Square. In Haoqiang? My family ran into some trouble last year. I asked someone to find Boss Yin's top fighter, Brother Liao's underling, Wild Dog, and it was easily settled. Boss Yin's influence is not only in Scarlet Sun City, but 1/3 of the entire Scarlet Sun planet's underground forces are under his control. I heard that his backing is one of the 4 big families, the Yin family. Chen Wei said with a shocked face. When it came to legendary figures, this group of families' disciples were very interested. They were only disciples of small or medium-sized families, and they were far inferior compared to a big boss like Yin Haoqiang, who had connections with the 4 big families. Brother Jean, you are still the one with face. Even someone like Sister Lan obediently came to toast you. Your Jean family has been developing rapidly these past few years, and it seems that it has the momentum to become a big family. Brother Jean, you must take care of us friends in the future. Tian Meng never forgot to praise Jean Wenqing, so as to attract his attention. At this time, Jean Wenqing was very happy when he heard these words. He felt that this girl Tian Meng was really sensible. He nodded with a smile, and he did not forget to look at Li Daochong, who was only focused on eating. Li Daochong, don't just focus on eating. Tell us, what is the difference between these dishes and your quicksand stars? Jean Wenqing saw that it was about time to lay the groundwork. Today, no matter what, he had to make a fool of this hothead in front of Huang Jiran. There is no difference, Li Daochong replied with a grumble. Ha ha ha, Brother Jean, quicksand star is so awesome. Our Scarlet Sun star can't compare. It is said that they can't even grow spirit rice there. They usually eat sandstone lizard meat, which we don't have in our Scarlet Sun star. Chen Wei sneered. Sandstone lizard meat is very good. It is said that it tastes like chewing wax and you need to use a lot of strength to eat it. Li Daochong's table manners should be the result of years of habit. Qing Jiahao also ridiculed. Li Daochong, don't you think that your table manners are very similar to a starving person of Quicksand Star? Jean Wenqing smiled and said, Oh no, not like a starving person, more like a sand pig. Everyone at the table burst into laughter. Only Huang Jiran frowned. Asterisk pa. Asterisk Li Daochong put down his chopsticks, raised his head, and glanced at Jean Wenqing indifferently. These 3 fellows were singing the same tune, and the more they spoke, the more outrageous they became. They had even started to attack him personally. Li Daochong did not provoke others, but if others took the initiative to provoke him, he would not be afraid. At most, he would fall out with them. However, after glancing at Tan Shiyuan's crying face, Li Daochong did not flare up. Since they could not get along well, he got up and prepared to leave. Have you guys said enough? Is there anyone who treats their guests like this? Huang Jiran's face was cold. He looked at Li Daochong apologetically and said, Li Daochong, don't worry about them. Eat your food. Jean Wenqing felt as if he had been punched in the heart, but he could only endure it. He did not dare to do anything to Huang Jiran. Seeing that Huang Jiran was about to flip out, the few of them did not dare to mock Li Daochong anymore. Qing Jiahao quickly raised his glass. Come, come, come. Thank you for your hospitality, Brother Jean. I'll drink first as a toast. Very quickly, the atmosphere at the table became lively again. Li Daochong did not intend to stay any longer. He bid farewell to Tan Shiyuan and was about to leave. Tan Shiyuan wanted to ask him to stay, but he did not know how to do so. He could only apologize. Daochong, it's my fault today. I should not have brought you here. Li Daochong smiled indifferently. It's okay. You have good intentions. After saying that, Li Daochong got up and left. As for Jean Wenqing and the others, He did not even look at them. Humph, what a joke! So uncultured. A country bumpkin will always be a country bumpkin. He has no self-restraint at all. Brother Jean is treating, and he left without even saying goodbye. Tianmeng immediately said. Jean Wenqing glanced at Huang Jiran and revealed an expression that said, "Now you know what kind of person he is." However, Huang Jiran suddenly stood up. "Li Daochong, I'll send you off." Everyone at the table was shocked again. Huang Jiran ignored them and jogged forward, following Li Daochong out of the private room. "You don't have to send me off. Go back." Li Daochong did not look sideways as he walked and said indifferently, "No, I have to go back too. Thank you for treating me today." Huang Jiran said apologetically with a sincere face. Li Daochong did not reply and went downstairs. Since Huang Jiran did not want to stay, he did not have to say anything more. Just as the two of them were about to go downstairs together, a muffled sound came from behind them. They turned around and saw Tan Chiyuan kicking a fat man to the ground. Chapter 180. After Li Daochong and Huang Jiran left the room, Jean Wenqing was furious. He immediately sent a message to Tianmeng, asking her to follow them. Tianmeng couldn't wait to do something for Jean Wenqing. She immediately used the excuse of going to the toilet to drag Su Rongrong along. Tan Chiyuan was eager to chase after a girl, so he followed them out. Tianmeng was so eager to get things done that she almost rushed out of the room. As a result, she bumped into a drunk fat man. The fat man saw that the girl was pretty, so he held her up. His fat hand immediately grabbed Tianmeng's butt. Tianmeng was so scared that she forgot to scream. The fat man was tall and much stronger than Tianmeng. Tan Chiyuan went out and saw this scene. He was so angry that he rushed up to Tianmeng and kicked the fat man in the stomach. The fat man was a businessman. He was only in the 5th level of qi refining. How could he withstand Tan Chiyuan's kick? He fell flat on his face. His mouth was full of blood and one of his teeth was missing. "Little bastard, how dare you hit me? Do you know who I am?" The fat man was sober after the fall. He sat on the ground and howled. "I'm hitting you, you stupid pig. I don't care who you are." Tan Chiyuan raised his foot to kick the fat man again. Bang! Before Tan Chiyuan could finish his words, he had just raised his leg when an iron fist came up and landed heavily on his face. Tan Chiyuan staggered and bumped into the door frame. The door frame couldn't hurt him as he was in the 9th level of qi refining. However, his cheek was hit so hard that his front teeth were knocked out. His mouth was full of blood. "Bastard, you've got guts. You even dare to hit President Chiu. I think you're tired of living." A fierce voice came from the side. Tan Chiyuan just realized that the fat man had a companion. The man had a buzz cut and bulging muscles. There was a tattoo of a python on his exposed arm. The ferocious snake head was sticking out its tongue. There were two big men behind the man. Their breath was not weak. Tan Chiyuan's cultivation was not good enough, so he couldn't sense their strength. However, he could see that the three of them were not weak. They seemed to be body cultivators. Cultivators were divided into 3 types: body refiners, qi refiners, and cultivators. The difference between the 3 types was that the first type was body refiners and not qi refiners. They only sought to achieve rapid success, which meant that their combat power was extremely strong. Body refiners in the qi refiner stage were the strongest. The second type was qi refinement but not body refinement. They used qi to enter the Tao, studied spells, and focused on a certain field. Their combat strength was the weakest in the early stages. The third type was body refinement and qi refinement. Their goal was foundation establishment. Most of them had 5 spirit meridians or more. Many people knew that they had no hope of reaching the foundation establishment stage in the future, so it was better to cultivate their bodies instead of their qi. They pursued actual combat strength and took the lead among ordinary people. They were incomparably powerful, and these people were also known as martial artists. In a moment of impulse, Tan Shiyuan had offended someone he should not have offended. That punch from the other party had caused him to feel deep fear in his heart, and he had also sobered up by half. Tian Meng and Su Rongrong were scared out of their wit. They had never seen such a scene. They had grown up in a greenhouse and lived like princes. To them, cultivation was simply a thankless task. No matter how good one's cultivation was, it was not as good as marrying well in the future. Tian Meng winked at Su Rongrong, and the latter immediately went back into the private room to call for help. Jin Wenqing and the others heard the noise and felt that something was wrong. At this time, they had already stood up and were about to come out. Seeing Su Rongrong come in, Qing Jiahao asked, "What's going on outside?" Su Rongrong said anxiously, "Tian Meng was molested. Tan Shiyuan fought with the other party." When Chen Wei heard this, he immediately felt the effects of alcohol. His face was red as he cursed, "Damn it! Which bastard dares to touch my brother? I'll twist his head off." Xiahou Quan rushed out without saying a word. Only Jin Wenqing frowned slightly. This was the Gold Member Hall on the 5th floor of the Pure Gold Hotel. Those who could come here were either rich or noble. How could ordinary people come here? But everyone was filled with righteous indignation, and Jin Wenqing could not shrink back. Moreover, several people present were looking at him as if they were following his lead. Jin Wenqing had to puff out his chest and follow Xiahou Quan out. "Wild dog, kill this guy for me." After being helped up by two big men, the fat man pointed at Tan Shiyuan and said fiercely, "President Chiu, don't worry. Wild Dog, will help you vent your anger. You are our boss's distinguished guest. How can we let you suffer? Beat him." The tattooed man called Wild Dog waved his hand and ordered. The two big men put down President Chiu and rushed up to beat him. At this time, a roar came from the private room behind. "Damn it! Which bastard dares to touch my brother? I'll twist his head off." It was Chen Wei who shouted because he was drunk. Then the door of the private room was pushed open. Xiahou Quan was the first to rush out and hold Tan Shiyuan, followed by Jin Wenqing. Chen Wei was the third to rush out with the smell of alcohol. He looked like he was going to fight. However, as soon as Chen Wei came out, before he finished shouting, he shuddered. He knew the man outside the door. It was Brother Liao's underling, Wild Dog, who was hired by his family to help last year. This guy's cultivation was not high, but he was a body cultivator. He was not only good at fighting, but also the kind that didn't care about his life. "Whose head are you going to twist?" Wild Dog lit a cigarette and looked at Chen Wei with a smile. No, I twisted my own head." Chen Wei's legs went soft when he saw Wild Dog. Last year, he saw Wild Dog cripple another gang leader's leg. Wild Dog even cheered as he beat him. That neurotic voice was still echoing in Chen Wei's ears. Tian Meng and Su Rongrong looked at Chen Wei in shock. This guy was so arrogant in the private room just a second ago, but he was scared the moment he came out. What was going on? "Chen Wei, who is this?" Jin Wenqing saw Chen Wei trembling with fear and knew something was wrong. He asked tentatively. "He is." Chen Wei was about to speak, but was interrupted by Wild Dog. Ha, who am I? You'll know in a moment." Wild Dog laughed heartily, then pressed his wrist. The door of the innermost private room opened immediately and a group of fierce-looking gangsters rushed out. There were more than 10 of them. "President Chiu, I'll take these bastards into the private room first. You can do whatever you want with them." Wild Dog smiled and said to President Chiu, who was wiping the blood from his mouth, "Take them into the private room together." The gangsters were about to make a move. Jin Wenqing knew something was wrong and was about to admit defeat. He had already sent a message to Sister Lan, asking her to come out and help. Jin Wenqing was about to speak when he saw Huang Jiran and Li Daochong coming back from the end of the corridor. Jin Wenqing braced himself and changed his words. "Friend, please do me a favor. I'm from the Jin family in Chiyang City. It's our fault for starting the fight. We can compensate for the medical expenses. The Jin family that deals in spiritual wood? Wild Dog raised his hand to stop the gangsters and asked. Yes. Jin Wenqing answered. Oh, the head of the Jin family, Jin Deju, is a friend of mine. For his sake, I won't arrest you. You can go into the private room yourselves. Wild Dog said as if he was giving them face. However, the viciousness in his eyes did not diminish. The gangsters moved aside to make a path. The others looked at Jin Wenqing. Chen Wei heard Wild Dog say that he knew the head of the Jin family and was relieved. Jin Deju had some prestige in Chiyang City. At this time, Li Daochong and Huang Jiran came back. Su Rongrong kept winking at Huang Jiran, telling her not to come over. Qiu Yuan, are you okay? Li Daochong came over and checked Tan Qiu Yuan's face. Chapter 181. Since Wild Dog knew the head of the Jin clan, Jin Wenqing's heart calmed down. In front of Huang Jiran, there was no way he would back down. He puffed out his chest and walked towards the private room first. No one else dared to say anything. They all followed Jin Wenqing into the private room. The 2 rows of gangsters lined up on both sides of the room, each with a fierce look on their faces. Li Daochong accompanied Tan Shiyuan into the private room. Tan Shiyuan regretted his recklessness, but it was too late. Huang Jiran followed behind Li Daochong. When the fatty saw Huang Jiran, his small eyes flashed with greed. After entering the private room, Jin Wenqing suddenly felt that something was wrong. This private room was 1 level higher than the other private rooms. There were only 3 people sitting at a large round table. One of them was Sister Lan, who had just toasted them. Sitting at the head of the table was a middle-aged man dressed in ancient robes. There was a hideous scar on his face, like a large centipede. He looked exceptionally fierce. Beside the middle-aged man sat a long-haired youth. He didn't look special, but his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. When Chen Wei entered, he almost collapsed to the ground. After Jin Wenqing and the rest entered, Wild Dog followed by the fatty, Director Qiu. More than a dozen thugs followed in one after another. The last thug who came in casually closed the door and locked it. This action made Jin Wenqing's heart skip a beat. The corner of his eyes twitched. However, he was still relatively calm. Seeing that Sister Lan was here, he felt that this matter could be discussed. Wild Dog walked to the middle-aged man's side. The viciousness on his face disappeared. He called out respectfully, "Third Master Yin, these brats beat up Director Qiu." Jin Wenqing's expression froze. Chen Wei leaned against the wall and almost couldn't stand straight. He recognized this famous person the moment he entered. Boss Yin was a title that was added to the outside world. People in the industry called him Third Master Yin. Director Qiu covered his mouth and sat down beside the long-haired youth. He said gloomily, "Third Master Yin, I didn't expect to encounter such a thing on my first visit to Planet Scarlet Sunday, bullying an outsider like me." Third Master Yin's face was cold. President Qiu was his esteemed guest, who had come from Kangwu Planet to investigate the market. Third Master Yin might be able to call the wind and summon the rain on Planet Crimson Sun, but he couldn't do so in other places, not to mention Planet Songwu, the #1 cultivation planet in the 4th ring starfield. It wasn't easy for Third Master Yin to invite President Qiu over. He was in charge of the silver business on Kangwu Planet. Pan silver was an extremely important resource for cultivation. Shuttles, magical equipment, and all kinds of spiritual machinery could not be separated from pan silver. This kind of metal was equivalent to the steel on Earth. Third Master Yin needed to sell the silver from Planet Crimson Sun to Planet Kangwu through President Qiu. The appetite of a second-grade cultivation planet was like a prehistoric giant dragon. It was unknown how many times more than a 4th-grade cultivation planet. President Qiu himself might not be a big deal, but Third Master Yin valued the sales channels in his hands. Today, Third Master Een had specially set up a banquet at the Pure Gold Hotel to entertain this President Chiu. He didn't expect that something like this would happen in the middle of the banquet. Wasn't this just messing with Third Master Een? Third Master Yin's cold face swept across Jin Wenqing's group. Who hit him? Wild Dog immediately pointed at Tan Chiyuan. Third Master, it's this guy. Break his legs. Third Master Yin's voice was emotionless. It was as if he was crushing a mosquito. Two burly men immediately went forward and grabbed Tan Chiyuan. The other man already had a metal rod in his hand. Tan Chiyuan's face instantly turned pale. He shouted, "You can't do this. Is there still any law? I am from the Tan family. If you dare to touch me, my father won't let you off. Brother Jin, Brother Qing, save me." Third Master Yin's face was filled with amusement. Tan family? The Tan family that grows spiritual herbs in the southern suburbs of the city? The person in charge is called Tan Xinhua? The moment Third Master Een spoke, the three men immediately stopped. They weren't in a hurry to make a move. However, no one noticed that Li Daochong, who was standing behind Tan Chiyuan, was moving his eyes and his hand was emitting a trace of spiritual energy. Fortunately, the man holding the rod didn't make a move. Otherwise, he would have already fainted on the ground. When Tan Chiyuan heard that Third Master Een actually knew his father, he hurriedly said, "That's right. Tan Xinhua is my father." The long-haired youth sitting beside Third Master Een sneered, "So you are that coward's son. Your father doesn't even have the right to see Third Master Een. Last time, he almost knelt down and begged for mercy in front of me." Tan Chiyuan heard the long-haired youth's words and was instantly filled with despair. He could only look at Jin Wenqing and Qing Jiahao. Among those present, only these two families had more power. At this moment, Jin Wenqing's intestines were green with regret. How could he have known that Tan Chiyuan would actually hit Third Master Yin's guest? This was too big of a mess. But at this juncture, Huang Jiaran was standing behind Jin Wenqing. If he were to cower, he wouldn't have the face to see her in the future. Tan Chiyuan had always been on good terms with him. "Sister Lan, I am Jin Wenqing. Jin Deju is my father. Brother Wild Dog also knows my father. I wonder if you can let my friend off for the sake of our Jin family. My friend will definitely compensate you handsomely." Jin Wenqing braced himself and spoke up. The extremely charming Sister Lan was now sitting obediently beside Third Master Een. Ever since Jin Wenqing and his group came in, she had been smiling all the time. "Young Master Jin, Sister Lan can't help you with this. Do you know what your father calls Wild Dog when he sees him?" Sister Lan raised her phoenix eyes and asked while leaning on Third Master Yin's chest. "What does he call?" Jin Wenqing asked subconsciously. "Call him Grandpa Dog. Wild Dog is your father's grandpa. Third Master Een is Wild Dog's grandpa. Your father has to call Third Master Een ancestor. Do you think your Jin family's face is of any use?" "Ah." Sister Lan couldn't help but laugh. Her voice was like a silver bell. It was supposed to be very pleasant to the ears, but in the ears of Jin Wenqing and his group, it was ear-piercing. With a thump, Chen Wei sat on the ground. He was so scared that he couldn't stand up. Tian Meng was in a daze. Su Rongrong's mind was blank. The two girls had never seen such a scene before. The Third Master Een was a very influential figure in the Scarlet Sun City. Other than the four big clans, no one could go against him. Qing Jiahao originally wanted to speak with Jin Wenqing, but after hearing Sister Lan's words, he completely gave up on the idea. He even regretted that he had followed them in. He had been ruined by Tan Chiyuan. Among the few people, only the Huang family's pretty faces didn't change much. They were still as cold as before. Of course, there was another person, Li Daochong. From the moment he came in, he used his telekinesis to scan everyone present. The one with the highest cultivation wasn't Third Master Een, but the long-haired young man. He was at the peak of the qi refining stage. However, this wasn't his true strength, because he was a body cultivator. He didn't cultivate qi at all. If a body cultivator's cultivation reached the peak of the qi refining stage, then his actual combat strength was at least at the middle stage of the qi gathering stage. Third Master Yin, this has nothing to do with me. I'm not very familiar with this guy. Can you let me go? Chen Wei was so scared that his voice was trembling. If this matter isn't settled, no one can leave, Wild Dog said fiercely. Tan Shiyuan looked at Chen Wei with a cold heart. This was the friend that he usually called brother? Third Master Yin, I, Tan Shiyuan, will take responsibility for what I did. I was the one who hit him. Can you let my friend go? I'll stay and let you do whatever you want with him. Tan Shiyuan gritted his teeth and said, at most, he would break his leg and slowly recover. Chapter 182. Jin Wenqing's heart skipped a beat. Third Master Yin nodded and looked at Jin Wenqing's group. Did you hear what Director Chiu said? Kneel down and kowtow. The girl stays. The rest of you get lost. Hearing this, Chen Wei felt as if he had been pardoned. His legs were so weak that he couldn't stand up. He crawled towards the door. Tian Meng, Su Rongrong, and Qing Jiahao all heaved a sigh of relief. Even Jin Wenqing, who had been stubbornly holding on, started to waver. Even if Huang Jiran was left behind, he couldn't save her. Jin Wenqing was considered a big shot in his circle of friends. The Jin family had some power after all. But in front of the Third Master Yin, Jin Wenqing was just an ant that could be stepped on. The Third Master Yin had the Yin family behind him, one of the 4 big families of Scarlet Sun Planet. It wasn't something the Jin family could mess with. Although the girl was beautiful, she wasn't as important as his own life. You guys treat the Federation's cultivation method as child's play. My uncle is the deputy director of Scarlet Sun Planet's security bureau. Try and detain me, Huang Jiran said coldly. Just as Huang Jiran finished speaking, the Third Master Yin frowned. A smile appeared on his ferocious face. Little girl, since you said so, I'll show you what the law is. Keep all the girls and break all the men's legs. The moment Third Master Yin finished speaking, the long-haired young man stood up first. Beside him, Wild Dog licked his lips nervously. He had been waiting for Third Master Yin's words for a long time. When Third Master Yin said that he was going to let these brats go, Wild Dog was extremely disappointed. He had been too bored recently and finally found some fun to play with. It was a pity to let them go just like that. Chen Wei, who was about to reach the door, turned around and howled, Third Master, this has nothing to do with me. Qing Jiahao saw 2 big men holding him down and couldn't hold it in anymore. He shouted, Third Master, let me go. I don't know that guy well. Jin Wenqing saw Wild Dog walking towards him and couldn't care less. He said directly, Third Master, let me go and I'll give you 10 million. When Jin Wenqing said this, everyone looked at him in shock. Only Huang Jiran didn't even look at him. It was as if she had expected Jin Wenqing to say something like this. The words of these 3 people had fully explained what kind of people they were. Tan Shiyuan was caught and couldn't move. At this moment, Xiahou Quan was the only one with a bit of backbone. Not only did he not beg for mercy, but he also pushed and shoved a burly man who wanted to grab him. The burly man's strength was actually no match for Xiahou Quan's. Tian Meng and Su Rongrong's faces turned pale, and they looked as helpless as chicks. Wild Dog walked in front of Jin Wenqing and grinned. With a coward like you in the Jin family, it will definitely decline in less than 10 years. Kneel down and I won't do anything. Thud. Jin Wenqing really knelt down. Elder Dog, please spare my life. Jin Wenqing, whom they had relied on the most, had actually knelt down in front of everyone. The few of them felt their hearts turn cold. It was all over now. Even if they didn't die tonight, they would be crippled. Ha! Wild Dog laughed hysterically. He walked past Jin Wenqing and walked towards Huang Jiran. Then he said, Little girl, you're quite hot. President Chiu will definitely like you very much. Huang Jiran frowned. She knew that she was really in trouble today. However, she wasn't afraid. The Huang family was only stronger than the Jin family. There were many people in the family who worked in the Federation government. They were all respectable people. No matter how powerful this third Master Yin was, he couldn't really go against the government officials. Huang Jiran didn't want to use her family to scare people. However, she couldn't not talk about her background now. Just as Huang Jiran was about to open her mouth and say her uncle's name, a voice slowly sounded from beside her. At the same time, an arm was in front of her, blocking Wild Dog. Everyone present looked over in astonishment. They saw Li Daochong standing in front of Huang Jiran. There wasn't much emotion on his handsome face. He didn't show any fear in front of Wild Dog. There was even a faint smile on his face. One of his hands was in his trouser pocket while the other stretched out horizontally. You're the third Master Yin, right? I think we should just forget about today's matter. It won't do you any good. Just give me some face. I will remember this favor. Dao Chong, don't talk nonsense. Tan Shiyuan was so anxious that his face turned green. He was already prepared to have his legs broken. Who would have thought that Li Daochong would suddenly appear and say such words? If this wasn't adding fuel to the fire and angering the third Master Yin, he was afraid that he wouldn't just have his legs broken. Huang Jiran stared blankly at Li Daochong's back. She didn't think that this young man she had just met today would have such great courage. He would stand up for her in the face of so many vicious big shots. Huang Jiran's eyes moved. Her face couldn't help but turn slightly red. At this moment, her heart that had never throbbed before had a trace of ignorant emotion. Give you some face? Who the F***ck do you think you are? You want the third Master Yin to give you some face? Wild Dog, who was stopped, shot a cold light from his eyes. The third Master Yin's ferocious and terrifying face revealed a mocking smile. He looked at Li Daochong as if he was looking at an idiot. Sister Lan, who was leaning against the third Master Yin, let out a burst of laughter. Ha ha ha, is this kid's brain damaged from fear? Li Daochong curled his lips and said lightly, It doesn't matter who I am. The important thing is that you guys better not provoke me. Li Daochong's words caused an uproar in the big box. Everyone looked at him, as if they were looking at an idiot. F***ck your grandfather. You F***king want to die. Don't drag us down with you. Qing Jiahao cursed loudly. Jin Wenqing knelt on the ground with a look of despair. His body couldn't help but tremble. Although he was in the early stage of the Qi gathering realm, he was enveloped by a terrifying force field after entering the box. It was the long-haired young man's force field. Because of this, Jin Wenqing couldn't move. Jin Wenqing deeply felt the terror of the long-haired young man as soon as he entered. He couldn't even beat Wild Dog. Chen Wei lay on the ground with a look of despair. He cursed in his heart. How could there be such a stupid kid? Why? Tian Meng and Su Rongrong hugged each other tightly with tears in their eyes. Tian Meng said to Su Rongrong with a sobbing tone, Why did you bring such an idiot here? He's dead. Huang Jiran's pretty face showed a touch of worry. The situation had developed in an uncontrollable direction after Li Daochong's words. How could these bullies be scared by a few words that didn't make sense? They would only become angrier out of humiliation. She didn't know if she could still protect this kid. Ha ha ha, don't provoke you? There's no one in Qiyang City that third Master Yin doesn't dare to provoke. Wild Dog laughed. Wild Dog, don't talk nonsense with this stupid kid. Do it. Beat him to death. The long-haired young man said coldly from behind. Yes, Brother Liao. Wild Dog responded and punched out. It was the same as when he punched Tan Shiyuan, but with more strength and speed. Be careful. Huang Jiran shouted from behind. She couldn't bear to watch and closed her eyes. Tan Shiyuan turned his face away. Xia Hokuan wanted to help Li Daochong, but he was blocked by two big men. Bang! There was a muffled sound. Gotcha, the sound of bones breaking. Wild Dog groaned and took a few steps back. He hit the big round table behind him. The arm that he used to punch was hanging on one side, unable to move. The shape of the arm seemed to have changed. The entire room was dead silent in an instant. Chapter 183. Wild Dog punched out. Li Daochong didn't use any strength. It was just a normal punch, but the power was beyond imagination. Wild Dog's fist and arm were completely destroyed. Li Daochong's punch was funny. He didn't know where this guy got the confidence to be so arrogant. Compared to Orson's fist, he was just a piece of paper. Huang Jiran opened her eyes and was surprised to find Li Daochong standing in front of her, as if nothing had happened. Wild Dog's blood was boiling in his chest. His entire arm was completely destroyed. There was no sound in the room for at least 5 seconds. Jin Wenqing and the others were shocked. Tan Qiyuan and Xiahou Quan both wondered if they were hallucinating. Wild Dog, are you okay? The long-haired young man was the first to react. He looked at Li Daochong with surprise. Brother Liao, this guy is also a body cultivator. The pain made Wild Dog's face sweat in just a few seconds. He forced himself not to fall. Wild Dog found it difficult to speak. He looked at Li Daochong with shock and fear. Only he knew how heavy that punch was. No wonder you're so confident. You're a body cultivator. I like it. Liao Hui's white face showed a trace of ruthlessness. Third Master Yin's eyes moved slightly. His ferocious face showed a trace of coldness. Liao Hui, don't hold back. He dared to hurt my people in front of me. Kill him. Yes, Third Master. Liao Hui's face showed a cruel expression. He hadn't fought for a long time. Because there was no one around recently, Liao Hui had to do it. Daochong, you have the ability. Go and get help from the school. Tan Qiyuan said in a low voice. Li Daochong turned and grinned. I can deal with these guys. As soon as he finished speaking, Liao Hui suddenly moved. He appeared in front of Li Daochong in an instant and kicked Li Daochong's head. Bah! Li Daochong raised his hand casually. A crisp sound was heard. Liao Hui's leg went numb from the shock, and his expression immediately changed. Good skill. As he spoke, Liao Hui withdrew his whip leg, and a steel rod appeared in his hand, smashing it heavily towards Li Daochong. Be careful! Dodge! Huang Jiran exclaimed. Li Daochong did not move and reached out to grab the steel rod. Was this kid crazy? He actually dared to use his bare hands to catch Liao Hui's steel rod. Did he not want his hands anymore? Almost everyone looked at Li Daochong in surprise, and the same thought appeared in their minds at the same time. Bah! The steel rod hit Li Daochong's hand and made a crisp sound. However, the scene of the rod breaking bones did not appear. Li Daochong's expression did not change in the slightest. He grabbed the steel rod with his hand and forcefully snatched it from Liao Hui's hand. Then, he kicked out. Bang! Even someone as strong as Liao Hui was sent flying across the table before crashing heavily into the wall behind him. Puff! Liao Hui spat out a mouthful of blood. What? Third Master Yin's ferocious face revealed a shocked expression. He was very clear about Liao Hui's strength. Liao Hui was the best fighter under his command. Liao Hui's strength among the body refining practitioners was close to the peak of the martial arts realm. He even had a slight possibility of entering the martial arts realm. Liao Hui was once not a match for 2 practitioners of the initial stage of the Qi gathering stage. However, this young man could easily send Liao Hui flying. A bunch of good-for-nothings. What are you looking at? F***K. Let's attack together and chop him to death. Third Master Yin stood up and roared in anger. Suddenly, a cold light shone in the room. More than 10 big men took out their weapons at the same time and pulled out their shining human-level low-grade machetes. Seeing this, Tian Meng and Su Rongrong were so scared that they hid in the corner. Jin Wenqing, who was kneeling on the ground, reacted quickly and immediately dodged. Chen Wei, who was sitting by the door, could not help but tremble. The two big men who were holding Tan Shiyuan put him down and joined the attack on Li Daochong. Huang Jiran was the only one in Jin Wenqing's group who did not show any fear. She did not know why, but standing behind Li Daochong, she felt very safe. Facing more than 10 machetes, Li Daochong slightly raised the corner of his mouth. How could they have the nerve to take out such children's toys? Pung pung, ka dong. In a flash, the battle was over. The people present did not know what had happened. More than 10 big men had all fallen to the ground and were howling. Some of them had arms that were deformed, some of their legs were bent, and some of their chests were slightly sunken. For a moment, the room was in chaos and howling sounds could be heard everywhere. Li Daochong had actually been merciful. If he had used his full strength, there would have been no survivors. Jin Wenqing and his group all had different expressions, but the shock in their eyes was the same. Oh my God, what was going on? Just a moment ago, they had been mocked and ridiculed as a country bumpkin, but in the blink of an eye, he had become a hidden master. At this moment, Jin Wenqing's lower abdomen was a little hot, and he had the urge to pee. Thinking of his attitude towards Li Daochong, he felt that he had been *ket up. This time, he had actually wanted to find trouble with him. Qing Jiahao and Chen Wei looked at Li Daochong in a daze, as if they had seen a ghost. Tan Shiyuan's mouth was wide open, but he did not realize it. His mind was blank. This guy was his desk mate? Was he dreaming? Whoever calls me again, I will break a few more bones. Li Daochong frowned and was annoyed by the howling. Once he said this, the room became silent. The group of big men did not dare to make any more noise. The entire room was silent. Sister Lan, who had been leaning on Third Master Yin's arms, subconsciously sat up straight. An invisible pressure made it difficult for her to breathe. I told you not to provoke me. Do you still think I was joking? Li Daochong walked to the round table and pulled out a chair to sit down. He looked at Third Master Yin and said indifferently. Third Master Yin's ferocious face twitched slightly. When had he ever been humiliated like this? He had seen all kinds of situations over the years. Even if his group of underlings were all defeated, he did not have a trace of fear in his heart. However, in the 20 to 30 years that he had roamed the Red Sun planet, the Third Master Yin had never seen such a powerful body practitioner. He was afraid that the strength of a self-cultivator was not much more than this. However, Third Master Yin was a ruthless character. He was a big shot that oversaw a region. How could he be scared? The shock in his heart quickly disappeared as he sneered. You are good at fighting, but this is the Red Sun planet, my territory. Not to mention that you are good at fighting, even a true self-cultivator would have to lower his head in front of me. Do you know why? Why? Li Daochong asked indifferently. Because I, Third Master Yin, am the representative of the Yin family, one of the 4 big families of the Red Sun planet. No one can challenge me on the Red Sun planet. Otherwise, they would be going against the Yin family. The Yin family's patriarch is the #1 person on the Red Sun planet. He is a mid-stage Jin Dan Almighty. Brat, no matter how good you are at fighting, can you beat a mid-stage Jin Dan Almighty? If I want to kill you, I have at least 100 ways. Each of them will make you wish you were dead, Third Master Yin said sinisterly. Is that so? Li Daochong asked back with interest. Then, his face turned cold. I only need one way to kill you. As he spoke, a talisman appeared in Li Daochong's hand. In an instant, the temperature in the room rose abruptly. Do you dare? I, Third Master Yin, have long disregarded my life. If you have the guts, then do it. If I frown, then I am not Third Master Yin, Third Master Yin said unyieldingly. Daochong, you can't, Tan Shiyuan called out. Li Daochong, don't. If you kill him, the Cultivation Security Bureau will not let you off. Huang Jiran anxiously tried to stop him. Did you hear what your companion said? I, Third Master Een, am not only in the underworld, I am also very popular in the legal world. There is nothing on the Red Sun planet that I, Third Master Een, cannot do. No matter how good you are at fighting, can you defeat the entire Red Sun planet? Third Master Een narrowed his eyes and continued, Brat, I'll give you two options. The first option is to kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times, call me boss, and become my hired thug from then on. I guarantee that you'll be satisfied with your monthly allowance. The second option is even simpler. Cripple your own arms and legs, throw down 30 million federal coins, and crawl out of this room. This matter will be over. Knock, knock, knock. Just as Third Master Een was speaking, there was a knock on the door. Sister Lan frowned. Who is it? Sister Lan, it's me, the lobby manager, Xiao Zhao. Come in. Chapter 184. Manager Zhao didn't lower his voice when he reported, so everyone present heard the words Young Master An's Ding Bang. Everyone knew who Ding Bang was in the upper class of Planet Crimson Sunday. When Third Master Een heard this, fear appeared on his ferocious face. Thinking about Ding Bang's methods and his identity as a mental cultivator made him uneasy. A few years ago, Third Master Een saw with his own eyes that more than 10 self-cultivators had angered Ding Bang. With just a thought, those self-cultivators all fell to the ground and wailed, as if they had fallen into hell. From then on, Third Master Een couldn't feel at ease when facing Ding Bang. The terror of mental cultivators left an indelible shadow in his heart. Young Master An is here. Third Master Een stood up. Where is he? I'll go and welcome him. Manager Zhao replied, Third Master, Young Master An is already here. He told me not to make a fuss. I think I should report this to you and Sister Lan. Third Master Een nodded. Okay, got it. You did well. I'll go after I'm done here. Go and welcome him quickly. If you neglect Young Master An, you'll lose your job as manager. Manager Zhao hurriedly said, Don't worry, Third Master. I'll go first. Okay, go. Third Master Een waved his hand. Manager Zhao immediately left the room. As he left, he glanced at Liao Hui and the rest with a puzzled gaze. As for the only young man sitting there, he was even more puzzled. However, this wasn't something he could ask about. After Manager Zhao left, Third Master Yin's mind drifted. It was as if he wasn't here anymore. Nothing was more important than entertaining Young Master An. That was the reason why Third Master Een could be so arrogant on Planet Crimson Sunday. Xiaolan, you go and entertain Young Master An too. Third Master Een was worried that Manager Zhao alone wasn't enough, so he said to Renlan. Okay. Renlan stood up and was about to leave. But just as Renlan stood up, Li Daocheng's voice suddenly rang out. It wasn't loud, but it pierced through one's heart and made one's brain buzz. Sit down. Without my permission, I'll break the legs of anyone who leaves this room. Renlan was only at the 7th level of qi refining. How could she withstand Li Daocheng's voice that contained mental power? She felt dizzy and sat back down. Brat, are you courting death? The fury that Third Master Een had been suppressing finally exploded. Fine, then no one is to leave the room. Today, this Third Master wants to see what you can do to us. If you have the guts, then kill us all. If you can't, then you and your friends can wait for the wrath of the Third Master Een. Li Daocheng frowned slightly. He didn't want to make a big deal out of this. He had only taken action to save Tan Chiyuan, Xia Hoquan, and Huang Jiran. He didn't care about the lives of the others. Since Tan Chiyuan sincerely treated him as a friend, Li Daocheng naturally treated him as a friend as well. Li Daocheng couldn't just stand by and watch his friends die when they were in trouble. Li Daocheng didn't care about the Third Master Yin's group at all. If he was alone, he could leave or stay as he wished. As for the aftermath, Li Daocheng had nothing to fear. With his current strength, The motley crew couldn't do anything to him. As for the self-cultivator, Li Daochong might not be a match for him now, but he was a student of the Federation's public university. With this identity, no one could touch him. But the third Master Yin meant that he wouldn't let the others go either. Li Daochong's gaze turned cold. The third Master Yin's words made him want to kill him. Li Daochong wasn't that stupid to kill the third Master Yin in front of so many people. But he could still make the third Master Yin lose control of his bowels without anyone noticing. He could do it with a telekinesis attack. No one would be able to find out the reason even if they wanted to. However, Li Daochong didn't really want to be ruthless as the situation hadn't reached a point where it couldn't be resolved. Li Daochong slowly stood up from his chair after the third Master Yin's harsh words. He walked around the round table and stood in front of the third Master Yin. Li Daochong was much taller than the third Master Yin. He looked down at the latter and said calmly, "I'll give you 3 seconds to think about it. Do you want to leave like this or continue to challenge my patience? If you don't give me an answer after 3 seconds, I'll slap you until you decide." Crazy. This guy must be crazy. After Li Daochong said those words, everyone in the room looked at him as if they were looking at an idiot. Although Li Daochong's strength was strong enough, could he be as strong as the Yin family? Jin Wenqing and the others finally understood that Li Daochong was a complete rash idiot. He was brave but not astute. He only had some skills in his fists and kicks, but his brain was a pile of **T. Fighting with the third Master Yin was like entering the latrine with a lantern and seeking death. Jin Wenqing was so anxious that he was about to cry. "Li Daochong, oh Li Daochong! Your strength has already shocked the third Master Yin's group. But can't you quit while you're ahead? The third Master Yin gave you 2 choices. The first one is obviously to cherish talent. Isn't it good to be the third Master Yin's underling?" Li Daochong had beaten the third Master Yin's underlings to the ground, but Jin Wenqing and the others didn't feel relieved at all. Instead, they felt that the situation was developing in an irreversible direction. Today they were doomed because of this idiot. Not only were they going to be unlucky, but they were also going to implicate their families. What kind of person was the third Master Yin? He was one of the leaders of the underground forces of the Scarlet Sun planet. The consequences of angering him were very severe. There was once a clan that was even stronger than the Jin clan that went head-to-head with the third Master Yin in terms of business and refused to give in. In the beginning, the third Master Yin suffered quite a bit. However, after the third Master Yin used his connections and forces, he crushed that clan like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. From then on, the shadow of that clan disappeared from the Scarlet Sun planet. Jin Wenqing saw that Li Daochong had started to become arrogant because he was able to fight. "If you don't want to live, don't drag us down with you." Not only did Jin Wenqing think so, but Cheng Jiahao, Chen Wei, Tian Meng, and Su Rongrong also thought so. The third Master Yin was already scary enough. The Yin family behind him was the pillar of planet Scarlet Sunday. It wasn't something that a few small families like them could afford to offend. The more arrogant Li Daochong acted now, the fiercer the third Master Yin's revenge would be in the future. It was inevitable that he would take his anger out on them. You even dared to slap the third Master Yin in front of so many people. Even if you want to die, you don't have to be in such a hurry. Chen Wei was timid by nature. He knew the third Master Yin's power too well. If Li Daochong wanted to die, then let him die. He couldn't be dragged down by this fool. After thinking about it, Chen Wei didn't care about his face anymore. He shouted, "Third Master, I don't know this kid. He was brought here by Tan Chiyuan. It has nothing to do with me. Third Master, if I lie, may the heavens strike me with lightning." "Third Master, what Chen Wei said is the truth. This is the first time we met this kid. He transferred from planet Quicksand," Jin Wenqing said. The two talked back and forth. Huang Jiran frowned and looked at the two with disdain. Jin Wenqing also noticed Huang Jiran's disdainful look. But right now, he only wanted to save his own life. He couldn't care less. There were plenty of beauties. Without Huang Jiaran, he could still look for others. He only had one life. Right now, the third Master Yin was looking at Li Daocheng's pitch-black eyes. He couldn't hear anything else. At such a close distance, even someone as ruthless as the third Master Yin was a bit scared. If he was slapped in front of so many people, then he wouldn't be able to stay in the underground forces of planet Scarlet Sun anymore. The third Master Yin didn't expect that this kid, who looked so young, would be so ruthless. He didn't leave any way out. It was really like a newborn calf that wasn't afraid of a tiger. Chapter 185. 1. Li Daocheng started counting by himself. F***ck Liao Hui, who was lying on the ground, roared. Normally, he was the one who stepped on other people's heads. When had he ever been humiliated like this? As the third master's top fighter, seeing that the third master was about to be slapped in front of everyone, Liao Hui rushed up and punched Li Daocheng while enduring his internal injuries. Bang! Li Daocheng didn't even look at Liao Hui. He waved his hand and Liao Hui was sent flying again. The difference in strength was like a chasm. Liao Hui, who was a super fighter in Qiyang City, had no power to fight back in front of Li Daocheng. 2. Li Daocheng's counting rhythm wasn't disrupted at all. Wait a minute. The third master couldn't help but speak up when he saw that he was about to count to 3. Have you thought it through? Li Daocheng raised his eyebrows. The third master was a little scared now. He didn't want to provoke Li Daocheng too much. If he angered this brat, no one in the room would be able to control him. If he was really slapped in the face, he might as well kill him. The third master had no choice but to use a stalling tactic. Brat, you have guts. Why don't you consider being my subordinate? I can give you a guaranteed salary of 10 million every month. If there's anything else you need to do, it'll be calculated separately. If you want to tell me this, then it's time. Li Daocheng was about to make a move. Suddenly, Chen Wei's roar came from behind. Li Daocheng, if you dare to touch the third master, I'll cut off Tan Chiyuan's spirit vein. Li Daocheng turned around. Chen Wei had climbed up from the ground and was holding a knife against Tan Chiyuan's abdomen. Tan Chiyuan was punched by Wild Dog earlier and was still dizzy. Just now, his body suddenly went numb. Chen Wei had taken out a Thunder Attribute treasure and held him hostage. Li Daocheng's telekinesis had been covering the entire room. He would be able to sense any movement immediately. But how could he have expected Chen Wei to betray him? Chen Wei was a living example of a traitor. Ha ha ha, brat, you want to save your companion, but he doesn't appreciate it. Third Master Yin sneered. But a loud slap resounded through the room. Li Daocheng looked in the direction where Chen Wei was holding Tan Qiuyuan hostage. He didn't even look at the third Master Yin and slapped him. In an instant, the room fell into a deathly silence once again. Half of third Master Yin's face immediately swelled up, as if he had been stung by a swarm of bees. The other half of his face, which was in good condition, turned green and then white. Sister Lan sat on the side with her mouth agape. She was dumbfounded. She knew the third Master Yin's character too well. This brat actually hit the third Master Yin in front of so many people. Sister Lan looked at Li Daocheng as if she was looking at a dead man. Brat, you must be tired of living. Third Master Yin is not someone you can touch, Sister Lan said in disbelief. But as soon as Sister Lan finished speaking, there was another sound. Li Daocheng waved his hand and gave the third Master Yin another slap. Chen Wei had two motives for holding Tan Qiuyuan hostage. One was to prove his allegiance to the third Master Yin and cut ties with Li Daocheng. 2 was to stop Li Daocheng from hitting the third Master Yin and bring the situation under control. If he really hit the third Master Yin, Chen Wei was sure that the Chen family would be buried with Li Daocheng. However, Li Daocheng didn't buy it at all. Chen Wei saw that he couldn't scare Li Daochong. For a moment, he didn't know what to do. He was already scared out of his wit. He held Tan Qiuyuan hostage but didn't dare to do anything. Young Master Jin, you're a smart person. Quickly go to the Supreme Hall and call young Master An. Sister Lan saw that Jin Wenqing was wavering and immediately called out. Jin Wenqing and Chen Wei were both shocked. They didn't expect the situation to develop to this point. Li Daochong was pushing everyone into the fire pit. The Jin family couldn't be destroyed by this country bumpkin. Jin Wenqing was very clear about how powerful the third Master Yin was. Huang Jiran stared at Jin Wenqing. The latter's eyes flashed with hesitation. Sister Lan saw that Jin Wenqing didn't move and said, Young Master Jin, if you don't want the Jin family to be unable to survive on the Scarlet Sun planet in the future, go and call for help. Sister Lan promises that this has nothing to do with the Jin family. Jin Wenqing didn't hesitate and walked out of the private room. Dao Chong, stop him! Xiahou Quan called out. Li Daochong tilted his head and said with a faint smile, Let him call for help. As he spoke, Jin Wenqing had already walked out of the private room and disappeared out the door. Sister Lan let out a sigh of relief. The third Master Yin's swollen face also revealed a smile of relief. His eyes revealed a sinister look as he said, Kid, you'll suffer later. Daochong, let's run. Tan Qiuyuan swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Huang Jiran's eyes revealed a rare look of urgency. She agreed with Tan Qiuyuan's words and nodded subconsciously. She looked at Li Daochong with a pleading look. If it was only the third Master Yin, Huang Jiran felt that her family could still be of use. However, it was a different story if it was the Yin family. On the Scarlet Sun planet, other than the other three big families, no one could go against the Yin family. Even the other three big families had to retreat in front of the Yin family because the number one person on the Scarlet Sun planet was in the Yin family. The third Master Yin's true strength wasn't himself, but the fact that he had the Yin family as his backing. Everyone in the private room looked at Li Daochong sympathetically. This hothead would soon pay a heavy price for his recklessness and arrogance. To put it bluntly, the third Master Yin was the Yin family's lackey. One had to look at the master before beating the dog. Judging from Li Daochong's skills just now, his cultivation base was probably at the Qi realm. His combat ability was at least at the Qi gathering level. With this level of strength, he could survive on the Scarlet Sun planet. A normal family wouldn't be able to do anything to him. However, was the Yin family an ordinary family? Not only was it not an ordinary family, but it was also a super family, or rather, the number one family on the Scarlet Sun planet. Third Master, are you all right? When young Master Yin comes, he will definitely seek justice for you. I, Ren Lan, will kneel down and beg young Master Yin to avenge you. Ren Lan clenched her teeth as she looked at Li Daochong. Kid, I'll see how you die later, the third Master Yin said sinisterly. Third Master, it really has nothing to do with me. Please be fair and let me go. Chen Wei crawled in front of the third Master Yin and cried. The third Master Yin looked at Chen Wei as if he was looking at a dead dog. Ren Lan smiled and said, You did well just now. Don't worry, the third Master's eyes are bright. I'll wait and watch the show. There's no one on the Scarlet Sun planet that the third Master can't deal with. Yes. Chen Wei nodded as if he had been pardoned. He stood up and stood to the side, not forgetting to glare at Li Daochong. Dong, dong, dong. At this moment there was a knock on the door. Come in. Sister Lan's face lit up. The door opened, and the first to enter were Jin Wenqing and Manager Zhao. The moment Jin Wenqing entered, he immediately said to the third Master Yin, Third Master, young Master An is here. When the third Master Yin heard the knock, he had already stood up from his chair and hurried to the door. Sister Lan followed by his side. Jin Wenqing and Manager Zhao moved aside, and they saw a young man sitting in a floating wheelchair. His eyes were like torches, and behind him were a few men dressed in the same Taoist robes. They were all wearing sunglasses made by the Yunyao Company. The aura of these men instantly enveloped the entire room. They were all cultivators at the peak of the late stage of the Qi-gathering realm, not far from the foundation establishment realm. The young man sitting in the wheelchair was the young master of the family, Ndingbang. When Sister Lan saw Ndingbang, she immediately burst into tears. She knelt down and hugged Ndingbang's two unconscious legs. "Young master, you have to help me and the third master. Someone destroyed our Scarlet Gold Hotel. Not only did they beat up the third master's men, they even slapped him." When Ndingbang heard that the third master had been beaten up, he was instantly enraged. But when the door of the room was opened, Ndingbang was stunned. He recognized that calm face at a glance and immediately cried out excitedly. Chapter 186. 10,000 Ghosts Devouring System. Ndingbang ignored Renlan's pitiful performance and called out to Mr. Li the moment he entered. Who was Mr. Li? Did Third Master have anyone with the surname Li? Renlan's face froze for a moment, and her performance came to a halt. Third Master was also confused. He quickly searched through the list of people with the surname Mr. Li in his mind, but he couldn't think of anyone who young master usually addressed as Mr. Li. There was no such person at all. Master Li Fugue hasn't settled the debt from before. Are you looking for him to settle it? Third Master couldn't help but ask after looking through everyone with the surname Li. In the end, he only thought of the pawnshop owner, Li Fugue. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Ndingbang. This young man in the wheelchair had a great background, so they couldn't help but pay attention to him. Thus, no one saw Li Daochong nod at Ndingbang with a faint smile on his face. Li Daochong could be said to be Ndingbang's savior. If it weren't for Li Daochong's help a few months ago, it was hard to say what would have happened to Ndingbang. Other than Ndingbang, his father, Anmanian, was also saved by Li Daochong. The family was also very curious about Li Daochong's background. Anmanian had specially sent people to Blue Bay Star to investigate. However, the results of the investigation were unexpected. Li Daochong's life wasn't worth mentioning. He came from an illustrious background and had an impressive father, but he was the victim of a brainless family. After Anmanian read through the investigation report, he tore it to shreds. As the current head of the family, how could Anmanian believe such superficial information? If Li Daochong's life was really so unbearable, how could he have learned ancient medical skills that were almost lost? How could he have cured a strange illness that even a Jin Dan alchemist couldn't treat? It could only be said that there must be some unknown secret behind Li Daochong. Either his father, Li Tianyang, had obtained some kind of secret technique, or Li Daochong had been taken in as a disciple by some powerful person, or he had a fortuitous encounter. There were only three possibilities. No matter which one it was, Li Daochong was definitely not what the investigation showed him to be. Anmanian, Ndingbang, and Shinhua had all interacted with Li Daochong before. Whether it was in terms of temperament or shrewdness, this young man didn't seem to be lacking in brains at all. As early as a few months ago, the family had already placed Li Daochong in the ranks of the young talents that the family needed to rope in. With his ancient medical skills, he would definitely be able to use them in the future. When Ndingbang saw Li Daochong, there was no one else in his eyes. He didn't even look at Renlan. The hover wheelchair moved and bounced Renlan away. He couldn't wait to float into the private room. Ndingbang's face was full of smiles. He walked past Renlan and headed towards the third Master Yin. When the third Master Yin saw that Ndingbang valued him so much in front of so many people, he had long forgotten the pain on his face. He hurriedly went forward and bowed 90 degrees. He said respectfully, Master, and when Jin Wenqing and the others saw that Dingbang valued the third Master so much, they were secretly delighted. At least they didn't choose the wrong side. If they had really followed Li Daochong and caused trouble, they would have died without a burial place. And Dingbang floated past the third Master as if he didn't see him at all. The smile on his face grew wider. The hover wheelchair slowly turned into a spiritual exoskeleton. And Dingbang stood up and walked to Li Daochong. He enthusiastically reached out and held Li Daochong's hand tightly. "Mr. Li, long time no see. Why didn't you tell me and Shinhua that you were coming to planet Crimson Sun? We could have welcomed you." In an instant, time in the private room seemed to have frozen. Everyone's thoughts couldn't keep up with the change. They all looked at Dingbang taking the initiative to hold Li Daochong's hand with a dumbfounded expression as if they were old acquaintances. The third Master felt dizzy. Sister Lan's face was very interesting. Her phoenix eyes were wide open. "What the F***ck is going on? Can anyone tell me?" The third Master screamed in his heart. Chen Wei, who was standing in the corner, was so shocked that his eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. This country bumpkin new Masterin? How was that possible? Jin Wenqing's legs went soft. He almost fell to the ground. This reversal was a little too intense. Was he King kidding him? "Brotherin, you're too kind. How are you feeling?" Li Daochong asked with a smile. "Yes, of course. After Mr. Li's treatment last time, not only did I get rid of the root of my illness, but my body also seems to be much stronger than before. My telekinesis has also reached a new level. Mr. Li's ancient medical skills are really magical," and Dingbang praised. "That's good." Li Daochong nodded. "Oh, right. Mr. Li, why are you here?" After chatting with Li Daochong, Dingbang remembered his purpose in coming to the private room. He suddenly felt that something was wrong and couldn't help but ask. "I came to eat with a friend and encountered a small conflict," Li Daochong replied indifferently. Dingbang glanced at the private room and then turned to look at the third Master. When he turned back, his smiling face froze. Then, a cold light flashed in his eyes. Dingbang could roughly guess what had happened. "Sanzi, you asked someone to call me. Someone said that someone slapped you. Who slapped you? What happened?" Dingbang questioned. His tone was filled with murderous intent. It was completely different from the warmth and gentleness when he was talking to Li Daochong. The third Master wanted to cry, but he couldn't. He wanted to beg for mercy, but he didn't know how to do so. How the F***ck did he think that this hothead would know Masterin? It seemed that their friendship wasn't ordinary. At this moment, Renlan was completely stunned. She stared blankly at Li Daochong. This young man's figure became unfathomable and unfathomable in her eyes. Tan Shiyuan and Xiaohuquan looked at each other. They felt like they were dreaming. What had they experienced in just 10 minutes? First, they inexplicably offended the third Master of Qiyang City's underground forces. They were beaten, arrested, and put under house arrest. They thought that even if they didn't die, they would be crippled. In the future, they could only hide their heads in Qiyang City. Who would have thought that Li Daochong, who had been ridiculed and ostracized from beginning to end, would suddenly show his power and beat up the third Master Yin's men, displaying his unparalleled strength. They thought that things might take a turn for the better. At least, they had the capital to negotiate with the third Master Yin. At least, they could walk out of the Pure Gold Hotel today. The two of them thought that they could talk about the future in the future. However, Li Daochong actually slapped the third Master Yin in front of everyone. Tan Shiyuan, who had just calmed down, held back his anger again. When Manager Zhao came in and said that the young master of the Yin family was here, Tan Shiyuan felt that he was doomed. The Tan family was finished. He was already considering if he should move the family out of Qiyang Planet. At this point, Tan Shiyuan felt that the world was spinning. Then, Dingbang, who was called over, turned out to be an old acquaintance of Li Daochong. Master N, it's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. No one slapped me. I slapped myself. The third Master N didn't dare to say anything else. He said with a long face. Slap. Third Master N slapped himself hard on the face. Ding Bang frowned and grabbed the third Master Yin's wrist. Ouch, Master N, be gentle. Be gentle. It's going to break. The third Master N wailed. I'm asking you a question. Who told you to slap yourself? Tell me everything. If you don't, I can only use my telekinesis to search your soul, Ding Bang said coldly. Chapter 187. 10,000 Ghosts Devouring System. Third Master Yin was sweating profusely. He looked at Li Daochong with fear in his eyes. He was no longer as fearless as before. He was almost scared out of his wit. No matter how blind a person was, they could tell that Ding Pang and this kid had a special relationship. It was definitely just an ordinary acquaintance. Yes, Mr. Li, what does Third Master have to do with you? If there's anything, just tell me. Even if you ask me to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire, I won't even frown, Third Master Yin responded quickly. It's good that you're fine. But my friend is injured. Take a look. Li Daochong didn't want to kill him. Since Third Master Yin had admitted defeat, there was no need for him to pursue the matter any further. But before he could finish, Third Master Yin interrupted him. 1 million for medical expenses. All right, let's drop this matter, Li Daochong said straightforwardly. Third Master Yin nodded. He ran to Tan Shiyuan and transferred 1 million to him on the spot. Tan Shiyuan was stunned. He didn't know how he had received 1 million in his account. Huang Jiran stared at Li Daochong in a daze. The little girl's beating heart was slowly blooming. Ding Pang stood to the side and didn't say anything. After Third Master Yin paid the money, he returned to look at Ding Pang in fear. Don't look at me. Listen to Mr. Li. If he's satisfied, I won't pursue the matter, Ding Pang said with a solemn face. Third Master Yin had contributed a lot to the Yin family over the years. He was very good at controlling the gray areas. Although his cultivation wasn't strong, he was very smart when it came to business. He did things that the Yin family couldn't do. But compared to Li Daochong, Third Master Yin's usefulness paled in comparison. The Yin family hadn't been peaceful recently. Ding Pang and Anmanian weren't the only ones with that strange illness. Others had it too, but they couldn't find the source. Even the Yin family's patriarch was helpless. Originally, Anmanian had planned to personally go to Blue Bay Star to invite Li Daochong to the Yin family. Now that Li Daochong was already on the Scarlet Sun planet, it couldn't be any better. Therefore, if Third Master Yin really angered Li Daochong, no matter how optimistic Ding Anding's state was about him, they would still cripple him in front of Li Daochong to give Li Daochong an explanation. And Ding Bang was very clear about Li Daochong's role. After the Yin ancestor found out about Li Daochong's matter, he was also greatly shocked. The ancient medical technique had been lost for thousands of years, and its miraculous nature truly had the effect of bringing the dead back to life. Alchemists were people that every family wished to rope in, let alone an alchemist who knew ancient medical skills. Hearing Ding Bang's words, Third Master Yin immediately looked at Li Daochong with a bitter expression. I've already said that this matter is over. Li Daochong found it funny, but he didn't want to make things too difficult, so he repeated himself. Li Daochong hadn't been at a disadvantage since the incident started. He had even injured more than 10 of Third Master Yin's subordinates, especially Wild Dog and Liao Hui, who were the best fighters. Right now, Wild Dog and Liao Hui were like Third Master Yin. They looked at Li Daochong with eyes full of fear. A powerful person who was addressed as Mr. Li by the first young master of the Yin family wasn't someone a bunch of hooligans like them could afford to offend. They were only where they were today because of the Yin family. No matter how good they were at fighting, how could they beat a true cultivator? Mr. Li, if you're satisfied, I won't ask any more questions about this matter. Let's go. Let's go drink. Seeing that Li Daochong didn't intend to pursue the matter, Ding Bang invited him. Li Daochong nodded, but he wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, he said to Ding Bang, "Brother-in, please wait a moment. I didn't know these people were your subordinates. They were a little heavy-handed. Let me treat them." "Humph, these guys are blind. They deserve to be beaten up by Mr. Li. Let them be. How can they deserve to be treated by Mr. Li?" Ding Bang looked coldly at the group of people lying on the ground. He gnashed his teeth in hatred. Luckily, Li Daochong was powerful. Otherwise, he would have been beaten up by these guys. If the Yin family wanted to invite Li Daochong to treat them in the future, wouldn't it be a waste? Li Daochong smiled and didn't say anything. He walked straight to Wild Dog. Wild Dog's face was covered with sweat. He had been standing up with great pain. His right arm was as uncomfortable as being burned by wildfire. Li Daochong grabbed Wild Dog's wrist. Wild Dog groaned in pain and looked at Li Daochong in horror. He didn't know what he was going to do. A stream of spiritual qi invaded Wild Dog's arm. The next second, the burning sensation on Wild Dog's arm disappeared. The broken arm bone, as if being soaked in spiritual liquid, was thirsty for nourishment. Wild Dog could clearly feel that his almost broken arm was recovering at an amazing speed. In just half a minute, Li Daochong took back his hand. Wild Dog's senseless arm could move. Although it was not very flexible, it didn't hurt anymore. The broken bones were all repaired. "Mr. Li, it's me." Wild Dog's eyes moved. Facing Li Daochong, he was afraid and grateful. As for hatred, he didn't dare to have it at all. Li Daochong patted Wild Dog's shoulder and turned to Liao Hui. It was the same. But Liao Hui's injury was more serious than Wild Dog's. His internal organs were all broken. But Li Daochong only spent 1 minute to heal his internal injury with rich spiritual qi. Using kindness and power, Li Daochong thought that he would need them in the future, such as buying materials for making talismans. After curing Wild Dog and Liao Hui, what about the rest? Wanlai Huan Xian Huan Song Nua Ing Mu Yao? Huanrong Wei? Liao Pang Tritium Catch Ju Huang Liao Wan Tax? Curtin Li Daochong showed such a skill. Ding Bang's eyes were shining. He could see that Li Daochong's qi treatment had made a qualitative leap compared to when he was treated a few months ago. After Ding Bang pulled Li Daochong away, there was a dead silence in the room for at least 10 seconds. Chen Wei sat paralyzed on the ground, his eyes lifeless. In the end, he had chosen the wrong team. Jin Wencheng no longer had a trace of arrogance on his face. He was like a drowning dog with his head drooping. Qing Jiahao was slightly better, but his heart was also filled with fear. Even Tian Meng and Su Rongrong's faces were pale. Thinking back to this afternoon and during dinner, they mocked Li Daochong. They even wanted to die. Who would have thought that a country bumpkin could be brothers with the young master of the Yin family, the #1 family on Red Sun Planet? Young master, and even called him Mr. Li. What the F***ck? They felt like their faces had been slapped dozens of times. Not only did their faces hurt, but they were also scared to death. If Li Daochong harbored a grudge in his heart and casually said a word to Ndingbang, the Yin clan would crush all of them like ants. Before Li Daochong left, he told Tan Shiyuan, Xiahou Quan, and Huang Jiran to go back first. The three of them calmed down and prepared to leave. The more Chen Wei thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. The more he thought about it, the more scared he became. Tan Shiyuan had just left when Chen Wei rushed up and hugged Tan Shiyuan's leg. He cried, "Brother, save me. You have to help me this time. Help me talk to Li Daochong. I, Chen Wei, am not a good person. I am a snob. Just treat me like a dog in the future." Chapter 188. Ghost Devouring System. Xiahou Quan kicked Chen Wei away. Jin Wenqing's face was ashen. He wanted to stop Tan Chiyuan, but he couldn't say it. Jin Wensheng was more experienced than Chen Wei. He turned to Tian Meng, who had calmed down, and said softly, "Meng Meng, go and talk to him." Tian Meng heard Jin Wensheng call her that, and her heart trembled. Without thinking, she ran up and hugged Tan Chiyuan's arm. "Chiyuan, help everyone. Li Daochong treats you like a brother. It will be useful if you go and talk to him. No matter what happened today, we are all friends, right?" Tan Chiyuan was bitterly disappointed by Chen Wei and Jin Wensheng's actions. He acted as if he never knew such friends. But now that Tian Meng came to plead for him, Tan Chiyuan's heart softened. He was sincere to Tian Meng. Although Tian Meng had a lot of bad habits, everyone had their own preferences. Tan Chiyuan was infatuated with Tian Meng. Xiahou Quan kept winking at Tan Chiyuan. Unfortunately, Tan Chiyuan didn't care about Xiahou Quan at all. The soft feeling on his arm made him forget everything. Tian Meng saw that Tan Chiyuan was hesitating. She rubbed her body against him and whispered in his ear, "Chiyuan, haven't you always wanted me to give you an answer? I'll give you an answer now. I agree to be your girlfriend." "Really?" Tan Chiyuan's eyes brightened. "Okay." Tian Meng blushed and nodded. Then she said softly, "But you have to help us talk to Li Daochong. Ask him not to take revenge on us in the future." "Okay." Tan Chiyuan agreed. It was useless for Xiahou Quan to be anxious. Tan Chiyuan couldn't see anyone except Tian Meng. Huang Jiran heard that Tan Chiyuan agreed to talk to Li Daochong, and her heart skipped a beat. When Li Daochong left, she was disappointed. But when she heard that she could see Li Daochong again, her heart jumped with joy. Tan Chiyuan glanced at Third Master Yin and said, "Third Master, which room did my brother Li Daochong go to? I have something to say to him." At this moment, Third Master Yin no longer dared to act like a boss in front of Tan Chiyuan. Today's incident was caused by this brat. Since Li Daochong could stand up for him, it could be seen that the two of them had a good relationship. Third Master Yin hastily said, "Let me take you there." Ren Lan, who was at the side, volunteered, "Third Master, I'll take them there. You should quickly soak your face in the spirit liquid and rest." Third Master Yin touched his swollen face. Only then did he remember that he probably didn't look any better than a pig's head. He immediately said, "That's fine too." Ren Lan led Tan Xiaoyuan and the group of people out of the private room and walked towards the 6th floor of the Pure Gold Hotel. That was the highest level floor of the Pure Gold Hotel. If one did not have a net worth of 1 billion and his cultivation level was below the middle stage of the Qi gathering realm, wanting to go to the top floor, there was no way. At this moment, Li Daochong was already drinking and chatting merrily with Dingbang. In fact, he didn't even take the matter of being ridiculed today to heart. "Mr. Li, let me toast you. Thank you for curing my father's and my strange illness." And Dingbang raised his glass. In the huge luxurious private room, a few bodyguards stood on both sides. Only Dingbang and Li Daochong were sitting at a round table. The rest of the people were all standing. "Brethren, don't worry. I also received the money." Li Daochong raised his glass and said, "Mr. Li's medical skills are superb. The consultation fee you received was not even 1% of other medicine refiners, but you were able to cure the strange illness that had been troubling my father and me for nearly 2 years. Just based on this, Mr. Li is a genius doctor of this generation. You're still so young, and your future is limitless. I, Dingbang, admire people with ability the most. Mr. Li, I'll drink first to show my respect." After speaking, Dingbang finished his glass in one gulp. Li Daochong followed suit and drank the wine in his glass. Knock knock. Just as the two of them finished drinking, there was a knock on the door. "Come in." Dingbang was a little unhappy that he was disturbed. Sister Lan walked in carefully, looking a little embarrassed. "Master and Mr. Li's friends want to see Mr. Li." Dingbang was about to reprimand Sister Lan, But when he heard this, he said, "Let them in." Tan Shiyuan walked in with a few people. Li Daochong looked surprised. "Shiyuan, you're looking for me?" Tan Shiyuan was about to explain the purpose of his visit when Chen Wei knelt in front of Li Daochong and said submissively, "Mr. Li, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I'm a jerk. No, I'm worse than a jerk. Just treat me like a fart and let me go." Jin Wensheng was a little embarrassed, but when he looked at Ndingbang, he couldn't care less. Although he didn't kneel down and kowtow like Chen Wei, he still begged for mercy. "Mr. Li, we were blind today. Please be magnanimous. I, Jin Wensheng, am here to apologize to you." Qing Jiahao, Tianmeng, and Su Rongrong all apologized one by one. Li Daochong finally understood. He couldn't help but find it funny. He had already forgotten about the matter, but these guys were so scared that they didn't dare to leave. Li Daochong's expression didn't change. He said calmly, "Get up. I can forgive you for what happened today, but I have a condition. If you agree to it, I won't hold it against you." Jin Wensheng gritted his teeth. "Mr. Li, tell us. As long as we can do it, we will." In his opinion, Li Daochong just wanted money. Other than that, what other conditions could he have? Li Daochong looked at the wineglass in his hand. He took a sip and said, "Pretend that you didn't see what happened today. If any one of you dares to talk about what happened today, then don't blame me for being rude." When Chen Wei heard this, he quickly said, Of course, Mr. Li, don't worry. If I, Chen Wei, go out and talk nonsense, I will be punished by the heavens and devoured by thousands of ghosts." Jin Wensheng was stunned. He didn't expect Li Daochong's condition to be only this. He immediately agreed. Li Daochong didn't believe these guys' promises, but they didn't have the guts to talk nonsense. Li Daochong waved his hand. "Go." Jin Wensheng and the others left the private room first. Tan Shiyuan said gratefully, "Daochong, thank you for what happened today. From now on, if you need me, Tan Shiyuan, for anything, just let me know." Li Daochong stood up and patted Tan Shiyuan's shoulder. He glanced at Tianmeng, who was leaving with Jin Wensheng, and said, "Shiyuan, you still don't have a good eye for people. Girls like Tianmeng should stay away from her. There are so many good girls in the world. Why do you have to be so stubborn?" Tan Shiyuan chuckled. "Daochong, some things can't be explained clearly. I understand what you mean. I will teach Tianmeng well." Li Daochong sighed in his heart. He didn't say anything more. "Then you have to keep your eyes open." Tan Shiyuan nodded. "Okay, Daochong, I won't disturb you and young Masterin. I'll go back first." "Go." Huang Jiran stood behind Tan Shiyuan the whole time. Li Daochong didn't say anything to her. She left with Tan Shiyuan with a hint of bitterness in her eyes. 2 hours later, Li Daochong declined Ndingbang's invitation to stay and returned to Beiyang University alone. However, he promised Ndingbang that he would go to the infamily to treat those with strange diseases in half a month. If it wasn't for the fact that it would take time to gather all the sick people, Ndingbang would have brought Li Daochong back to the infamily that night. From Ndingbang's words, Li Daochong had a deeper understanding of planet Qiyang. This place was more prosperous than Blue Bay Star. There was also an underground city on planet Qiyang, but it wasn't around Qiyang City. It was in Huangpa Town, 500 kilometers away. A few days later, Li Daochong arrived at Huangpa Town. Li Daochong thought about it for a long time, but in the end, he didn't go to Third Master Yin Ndingbang. He felt that it would be safer for him to buy it himself. Regarding the infamily, Li Daochong didn't trust them as much as he did old Devil Zhang. Chapter 189. There were still 3 months before the joint examination of 100 schools, and Li Daochong hadn't obtained any qualifications to take part. However, Li Daochong wasn't in a hurry at all. No matter how much Old Qian urged him to take part in Beiyang University's examination, Li Daochong only agreed verbally and didn't sign up himself. Li Daochong had already made up his mind to take part in the direct examination, and there were still 2 months before the examination began. Li Daochong felt that his strength was sufficient to enter the front line. He planned to reach the later stage of the Qi gathering within 2 months, and then reach the peak of the Qi gathering stage through the direct examination. Then, he would directly enter the final examination of 100 schools as a peak of the Qi gathering stage. Li Daochong didn't come alone. It was his first time going to an unfamiliar place, and having a guide would always save him a lot of trouble. Li Daochong's first thought was naturally Tan Shiyuan, followed by Xiahou Quan. Unfortunately, both of them were taking part in Beiyang University's internal examination today. If they passed this time, both of them would enter the final examination, and if they passed, they would be able to get a place to take part in the joint examination of 100 schools. The importance of this was self-evident. Li Daochong didn't participate, but when he found Tan Shiyuan, the kid didn't hesitate to skip the examination and accompany Li Daochong to the underground city. How could Li Daochong agree? He was just going to the underground city to buy some things, and it wasn't important at all. How could he ruin Tan Shiyuan and Xiahou Quan's future because of this? Li Daochong wouldn't agree no matter what. Seeing Li Daochong's firm attitude, Tan Shiyuan gave up on the idea of accompanying him and called Huang Jiaran over. Huang Jiaran was a music cultivator, not a combat cultivator. She didn't need to take part in the joint examination of 100 schools, and she usually didn't have many classes. The Huang family was in the business of spiritual machinery parts, and their supply channels were diverse. They had long-term cooperative relationships with some gangs in the underground city, so Huang Jiaran was more familiar with the underground city. Tan Shiyuan felt that it would be better for Huang Jiaran to lead the way. Huang Jiaran received Tan Shiyuan's telepathic message and immediately drove his Star Brand flying shuttle to Beiyang University. Seeing Li Daochong again, Huang Jiaran's face flushed red. She drove the shuttle absent-mindedly. In the middle, they even took a wrong route, and after circling around, they finally arrived at the flying shuttle parking lot outside Huangpa Town. Huangpa Town was surrounded by mountains on all sides, and the entire town was shrouded in a layer of faint mist, giving it a feeling of a spiritual realm. However, the bustling crowd that came and went in the small town completely destroyed this artistic environment. Li Daochong felt that it was like a market on earth, but the town was bigger than he had imagined. In the middle of the town, there was a tall cylindrical building with a height of 35 floors. In Scarlet Sun City, such a building wouldn't be considered a tall building. However, in this small town where there were only a few dozen buildings, it could be considered the number 1 building. Mr. Li, I heard from Qiyuan that you're here to buy materials. What materials are you looking for? Standing outside the town, Huang Jiaran asked curiously, with some respect in her voice. The strength that Li Daochong had shown last time was already beyond Huang Jiaran's knowledge. The strongest person in the Huang family was only in the late stage of Qi gathering. Even if he fought with Liao Hui, who was a pure-body refining martial artist, he might not be able to gain any advantage. However, Li Daochong was able to kill Liao Hui in seconds. This young man was not only strong, but was also a guest of the eldest son of the Yin family. How could Huang Jiaran not respect him? Most of Huang Jiaran's friends were hedonistic sons of rich parents like Jin Wenqing. They didn't have any abilities, and relied on their family's power and wealth to go around eating, drinking, and having fun. They didn't think about improving themselves, and their cultivation was built with money. Their actual combat power was pitifully weak. Take Jin Wenqing for example. He was obviously in the early stage of Qi gathering, and should be considered an expert among ordinary people. However, Jin Wenqing's actual combat power might not even be able to defeat someone in the 7th or 8th stage of Qi refining. His foundation was very unstable, and his spiritual meridians weren't developed very well. He was forced to use all kinds of spiritual liquids, spiritual medicines, and speed up his cultivation. He looked good, but was useless. If it weren't for this, Jin Wenqing wouldn't have been so scared that his legs went soft when he saw Wild Dog. Therefore, when Li Daochong appeared out of nowhere, Huang Jiran's heart palpitated. This was the first time in her life that such a person had appeared. Li Daochong had already left, and was about to go downstairs when he saw Tan Chiyuan being beaten up. Without thinking, he turned around to help. Facing the third Master Yin's group of fugitives, Li Daochong defeated them all like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. He was fearless. Unlike Chen Wei and Jin Wenqing, when they saw that the situation wasn't right, they turned around and sold out their friends, only caring about their own lives. Huang Jiran's heart, which had been silent all this time, was suddenly awakened. Women were emotional creatures, and that moment of feeling was enough for her to remember for the rest of her life. Miss Huang, just call me Daochong. Mr. Li sounds weird. Li Daochong looked in the direction of the town and then said, I want to buy some high-level materials for making talismans. Huang Jiran stuck out her tongue, and a trace of shyness appeared on her pretty face. She said, Mr. Li, you should be a little older than me, right? How about I call you Big Brother Li? Li Daochong curled his lips, and didn't look at Huang Jiran at all. At this time, his thoughts were all on Huang Patown. Whatever, as long as you don't call me Mr. Li. Huang Jiran got permission and smiled gracefully. Big Brother Li, what are the materials you want to buy? Li Daochong thought for a while and then replied, Thunder Gold Powder, Red Flame Ink, Thunder Cloud Fog Water. The more Huang Jiran heard, the more shocked and surprised she was. None of the materials Li Daochong listed were common goods. They were all materials for making high-level talismans, at least level 6 and above. Every one of them was expensive, and if sold by the gram, it would cost more than $10,000. Especially the Thunder Cloud Fog Water, which cost 200,000 to 300,000 per gram. Huang Jiran was shocked, and wanted to know what Li Daochong wanted these materials for. It seemed like he wanted to make talismans. Could it be that Big Brother Li was also a spirit sequencer? Huang Jiran's eyes twitched. If he only wanted high-level talismans, he didn't need to buy materials, and could just spend money to buy talismans. There were only two kinds of people who bought talismans. One was a spirit sequencer who made talismans themselves, and the other was a buyer from a talisman company. Huang Jiran saw that Li Daochong wasn't interested in chatting with her, so she didn't dare to ask any further. She thought for a while and said, Big Brother Li, the materials you want are rare materials that can't be found in the small town's market. You have to go to the underground city and buy them at the Shadow Serene Square. I happen to be a mid-level member of the Shadow Serene Square, and I can enjoy a discount of 8%. Let's go, Big Brother Li, I'll bring you to the Shadow Serene Square. Actually, once they reached the Shadow Serene Square, Li Daochong didn't need Huang Jiran anymore. He wanted her to bring him in and let her go back, but seeing how enthusiastic she was and how she kept calling him Big Brother Li, Li Daochong didn't want to chase her away. Li Daochong was the Shadow Serene Square's Diamond VIP, and the highest level member. He even had the priority to buy at auctions, and he could enjoy a 20% discount on all items. 10 minutes later, Huang Jiran brought Li Daochong to the Shadow Serene Square in the Scarlet Sun Star's underground city. This place was different from the Blue Bay Star, as it wasn't a tower, but a huge square building. It was much taller than the Blue Bay Star. Chapter 190. Huang Jiran turns around and sees several young people in gorgeous Taoist robes walking over. There are both men and women. The one who spoke is a tall young man who is the leader of the group. He releases his cultivation. Other than his friends, The other passers-by who come to Shadow Serene Square automatically disperse to keep a distance from these guys. The tall young man's cultivation has reached the middle stage of qi gathering. Unlike Jin Wenqing, his spiritual qi is rich and aggressive. Once it envelopes people, it will immediately suppress them and make it difficult for them to breathe. When Huang Jiran sees the tall young man, her face shows a trace of disgust, even more so than Jin Wenqing's. But under that disgust, Huang Jiran also feels a bit timid, because the tall young man's identity is too shocking. Ouyang Ju, a direct descendant of the Ouyang family, the strongest of his generation, a student of the super class of Qiyang University, who has already qualified to participate in the joint examination of 100 schools and is at the peak of the middle stage of qi gathering. If Jin Wenqing is Huang Jiran's pursuer, then Ouyang Ju is trying to dominate her. Ouyang Ju's cultivation method is extremely strange. It is a secret method passed down from the ancestors of the Ouyang family. It can only be practiced by plucking yin to supplement yang. This method has a very strange name, chaotic clouds and rain. It is said that Ouyang Ju has to find a healthy woman to practice this method with every month. Almost every woman who dual cultivates with Ouyang Ju will have a weak body, weak spirit, and then seriously ill in bed. Some of them die of unknown causes, and some of them are not as good as before after surviving. Ouyang Ju's cultivation is increasing almost every month. In just 2 years, he has cultivated from the 3rd level of qi gathering to the middle stage of qi gathering. His cultivation speed may still be a bit slower than that of a real genius, but his foundation is very solid, and his actual fighting strength is much stronger than that of cultivators of the same level. Ouyang Ju is lustful by nature, and women are just playthings and cultivation furnaces for him. This matter was investigated by the Security Bureau of Qiyang City, but the Ouyang family is too powerful and they couldn't find any evidence. In the end, the Ouyang family just gave some compensation and let it go. Ouyang Ju's strange cultivation method was also taken out for analysis. If it is a demonic cultivation method, the Security Bureau can throw him into prison. However, according to the results of the research, this technique was not a demonic technique, but a kind of dual cultivation technique passed down from ancient times. It did not violate the Federation's rules of cultivation. Even though everyone knew about Ouyang Ju's deeds, as long as he waved his hand, there would still be a large number of women flying towards him like moths to a flame. There was no other way. Ouyang Ju had always been very generous. The Ouyang family valued Ouyang Ju very much, so they had a lot of cultivation resources and monthly allowance. Although Huang Jiran hated Ouyang Ju, he didn't dare to show it in front of him. If it was someone like Jin Wenqing, with Li Daochong by his side, Huang Jiran would have directly ignored him. Ouyang Ju was different. The Ouyang family was a super family that could directly challenge the Yin family. Even if Li Daochong had a close relationship with Childan, he was not a descendant of the Yin family. The Ouyang family might be slightly inferior to the Yin family, but Ouyang Ju was a genuine descendant of the Ouyang family. In Huang Jiran's opinion, Li Daochong couldn't afford to offend Ouyang Ju. Huang Jiran had to force a smile. "I brought a friend here to buy something." Today, Huang Jiran had specially dressed up. His purpose was naturally to attract Li Daochong's attention, but it didn't seem to be working well. Huang Jiran was wearing a cloud jade corset robe. Half of the sleeves were exposed, and half of her arms were exposed. Her skin was fair and attractive, and her small waist was accentuated by the robe. Her lower body was wearing a knee-length long skirt. Her pair of full calves were exposed, and her bony ankles were extremely attractive. This outfit was youthful and beautiful, with a bit of sexiness, but it was not too revealing. Ouyang Ju, who had seen many wanton women, revealed a greedy look when he saw Huang Jiran. Even he, Ouyang Ju, rarely came into contact with such a woman. Huang Jiran had always been one of Ouyang Ju's targets, but many of the Huang family's clansmen worked in the Federation government, and the old master of the Huang family held a post in Kangwu Star. The Huang family might not be as powerful as the Ouyang family, but they were linked to the government, so Ouyang Ju didn't dare to use extreme methods on Huang Jiran. "Oh, it just so happens that I also came to buy something. Long time no see, why don't we go together?" Ouyang Ju didn't even look at Li Daochong, who was next to Huang Jiran, as his eyes were fixed on the bulging chest of Huang Jiran. "No, I still have something to do," Huang Jiran said as she pulled Li Daochong's arm and walked into the Shadow Serene Square. Ouyang Ju saw Huang Jiran taking the initiative to pull a man, and his eyes flashed with jealousy and hatred. Only then did he shift his gaze to Li Daochong, but he quickly lost interest. This kind of trash, who couldn't even afford a decent robe, was not even qualified to be his opponent. Li Daochong didn't look at Ouyang Ju's group from the beginning to the end, and didn't care about the conversation between the two. Huang Jiran didn't say anything, and Li Daochong had already walked into the Shadow Serene Square. Seeing Huang Jiran leave just like that, Ouyang Ju was unwilling. He'd heard that Huang Jiran was still a virgin, and that she had a Yin spirit vein. If he could dual cultivate chaotic clouds and rain with Huang Jiran, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Originally, Ouyang Ju wanted to find an excuse to invite Huang Jiran to his birthday party, but he didn't expect to meet her in advance. Ouyang Ju naturally didn't want to miss this opportunity. "Ran, what do you want to buy? I'll buy it for you. As long as you like it, I'll even pluck the stars from the sky for you." Ouyang Ju followed her and asked with a fawning expression. "Thank you for your kindness, but it's really not necessary." Huang Jiran replied politely. "Huang Jiran, who do you think you are? Young Master Ju's good intentions, how can you refuse like this? Are you doing this on purpose?" A tall girl following behind Ouyang Ju wanted to show off so that Ouyang Ju would accept her. That way, she would be able to get a large sum of compensation. That sum of money would be enough for her to live a carefree life for the rest of her life. When the time came, she would take this money and directly migrate to Kangwu Planet. It would be much safer. Recently, planet Qiyang wasn't very peaceful. It was said that many strange things had happened in many areas. The Cultivation Security Bureau had already launched an investigation, and even the local army had been mobilized. However, so far they hadn't found anything. However, the people of planet Qiyang had already spread the news that a spatial crack had appeared on planet Qiyang that led to the Hades. Powerful dark ghosts had entered planet Qiyang. The tall girl was called Yihong. She was one of Ouyang Ju's recent candidates for female cultivator. As soon as she finished speaking, the other girls and boys all agreed. One of the rich young masters said, "That's right, why are you pretending to be pure? If you're really pure, would you come to a place like the underground city with a strange man? Tsk, disgusting." Huang Jiran sighed in her heart, but she wasn't angry. Instead, she looked at Yihong and that rich young master with a sympathetic gaze. She didn't reply, but pulled Li Daochong and walked straight into Shadow Serene Lane. Because Huang Jiran was an intermediate member, she could enter Shadow Serene Lane. She didn't need to wander around Shadow City. The moment she entered, a young girl immediately came up to greet her warmly. When the young girl saw Huang Jiran and Li Daochong together, a strange look appeared in her eyes. The two of them really didn't match well when standing together. The young girl's clothes were exquisite. Her Taoist robes were expensive, while the young man beside her was dressed too shabbily. The difference between the two of them was too big. It was very eye-catching. When they entered, the scanner scanned the young girl and immediately showed her some basic information as an intermediate member. However, the young man didn't react at all. The young man obviously had nothing to do with Shadow Serene Lane. However, intermediate members had the right to bring a non-member into the first level of Shadow Serene Lane, so the young girl couldn't say anything. Chapter 191. Huang Jiran glanced at Li Daochong. Seeing that he was not speaking, she asked, "Do you have thunder gold powder?" After Li Daochong entered, he had sensed a trace of indistinct death qi. This made him feel very strange, so he focused all his attention on sensing the death qi. Hearing this, the young woman was stunned. After a while, she said apologetically, "Miss Huang, I'm sorry. We do have thunder gold powder, but your level is not high enough. The first floor of the Serene house does not sell thunder gold powder." Huang Jiran's pretty face revealed a trace of awkwardness. She asked again, "What about Qi Yanma?" The young woman continued apologetically, "Your level of authority is not high enough. You can only buy items on the first floor of the Serene house. Only advanced members can go up to the second floor, gold members can go up to the third floor, and platinum members can go up to the fourth floor. Diamond VIP members are the highest level members of the Serene house and can enter any place and buy any item. You are only an intermediate member and can only buy items on the first floor." The young woman very formally explained the rules of the Serene house, so that the girl in front of her would not continue to ask. Li Daochong focused his mind and condensed a strand of telekinesis. Finally, he captured that indistinct death qi. It was in an area behind the first floor of the Serene house. There seemed to be many people gathered in that area. Because of the mixed auras, the accuracy of the telekinesis was greatly reduced. Li Daochong had encountered many dark ghosts, but this death qi was extremely strange. It was sometimes strong and sometimes weak, sometimes bright and sometimes dark. It was erratic. Even its location was not very certain. It was sometimes in the east and sometimes in the west. Li Daochong's eyes flashed. There was a dark ghost hiding in the underground city. It was a pure dark ghost without a body. How could a pure dark ghost hide in a crowd without being discovered? Li Daochong frowned slightly. How was that possible? Li Daochong had basically read all the books in the Black Tsang University library. Now, he had a very deep understanding of dark ghosts. In his memories, there was no dark ghost that could brazenly hide in a crowd without being discovered. If dark ghost wanted to silently infiltrate a crowd, the only way was to possess someone. This was the simplest, most reliable, and safest method. Other than that, there were only a few types of low-level dwarf ghosts that could hide in the form of ghosts because the death aura on them was extremely weak. However, the death qi that Li Daochong sensed was somewhat special. It seemed to be wrapped by something, and was not the lifeless death qi. Huang Jiran really wanted to help Li Daochong. She glanced at the name tag on the young woman's chest. It had the name Wen Yuan written on it. Knowing that she did not have enough authority, Huang Jiran asked again, "Miss Wen, is there any other way to purchase these items?" When Yuan hesitated for a moment before replying, "I do, but I don't think Miss Huang would be interested." Huang Jiran's eyes lit up. "What way?" When Yuan pointed to the back of the first floor of the Hidden House. The Hidden House holds a martial arts competition every month. In addition to the winners of the competition receiving large rewards, the audience can also place bets on who wins. As long as the bet is correct, in addition to the winnings, the audience will also receive an unlimited right to purchase. This is an event held by the Hidden House to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the establishment of the branch on Scarlet Sunday. The final explanation rights belong to the Hidden House. Huang Jiran was somewhat tempted after hearing the introduction. She did not need to go up and fight. As long as she won a match, she would receive an unlimited right to purchase. It was worth it. Huang Jiran immediately turned and said, "Big Brother Li, why don't we go in and take a look?" Li Daochong was nowhere to be seen. Huang Jiran had been so engrossed in Wen Yuan's introduction that she had not noticed Li Daochong. When she looked back, he had already walked far away. Li Daochong, who had sensed the aura of death, was completely focused on it. The longer he sensed it, the more uneasy Li Daochong felt. This aura of death was not very strong, but it made Li Daochong feel an inexplicable sense of fear. This was a feeling that Li Daochong had never experienced in the past when he had hunted dark ghosts. Huang Jian hurriedly followed Li Daochong into a large door at the back of the first floor. After passing through a dim corridor, they arrived at another door. Behind the door there was a clamor of voices. Some were cursing, some were jeering, and some were howling to vent. Huang Jian frowned. She was very repulsed by this kind of situation, but in order to help Li Daochong, she was willing to go all out. When they pushed open the door, an ear-piercing scream was heard. Huang Jian subconsciously covered her ears. Behind the door was a large indoor area. It was filled with smoke, and in the center was a large circular stage. Around it were seats that spiraled upward in an arc, and at the very top were private rooms. This indoor area was very large, and there were at least 10,000 seats. But at this moment, there were no empty seats, and there were still many people standing. There were men and women, and all of them were filled with passion. As they watched the two warriors fighting on the stage, they waved their fists, wishing that they could go up and fight to their heart's content. Huang Jian found the betting table, and the receptionist informed her that this match was already halfway through. She could not place any more bets and could only place bets on the next match. Huang Jian did not understand, so she was just about to place a random bet, but when she saw the minimum amount, she was given a fright. A minimum bet of 2 million, or else one would not be able to participate. Li Daochong did not come here to obtain the right to buy without limit. He was originally a diamond VIP of the Shadow Serene Square. The reason why the scanner did not confirm his identity when he came in was because the diamond VIP card that old Ghost Zhang had given Li Daochong was placed in his Nayu bag, and he did not take it out. Li Daochong's target was that faintly discernible aura of death. Another ghost that could blend in with so many people without being discovered was either of a very low level or a frighteningly high level. But even though Li Daochong entered this area, he was still unable to pinpoint the exact location of the aura of death. Looking at the minimum bet of 2 million, Huang Jian was dumbfounded. She only had a little over 1 million in her account. Just as Huang Jian was fretting, Ouyang Ju's voice came from the side. Ran, are you also interested in black market boxing? Who do you want to bet on? I'll help you. Huang Jian did not expect that Ouyang Ju and his group would also come to the arena. She turned her face and almost agreed. She really wanted to help Li Daochong with this matter, but in the end she clenched her teeth and said, "No need. Brother Ju, forget it if she doesn't appreciate it." Yi Hong rolled her eyes at Huang Jian and then said sarcastically, "Huang Jian, you are the dignified daughter of the Huang family, following a country bumpkin. Did something happen to your brain?" Chapter 192. When Huang Jian heard these guys' words, her face turned red with anger. Li Daochong's attention was all on the death aura, so he didn't have time to bicker with these guys. He had a hunch that this death aura was very likely to be an extremely delicious spiritual energy meal. Ouyang Ju didn't place a bet. The bet of the black market fight was a drop in the ocean for him. One fight would at most earn tens of millions of Federation coins. This money was not enough for Ouyang Ju's cultivation. The purpose of his visit today was to compete for the ownership of the underground forces in the north of the Red Sun planet. The Red Sun planet was in the autumn of chaos. A few months ago, the boss of the northern region, Qiu Hai, suddenly died, causing the underground forces in the northern region to be leaderless. After a few months of chaos, the various forces decided to determine the final ownership through a martial arts competition. Whoever had the biggest fist would be the boss. This was the unchanging truth of the underground forces from ancient times to the present. All the forces coveted the northern region. Although the population in the north of the Red Sun planet was small, the environment was bad, and there were no big cultivation cities, but it was valuable because of its vast land, various cultivation mineral resources, and spiritual wood were everywhere. On the surface, the business and channels were firmly in the hands of the four big families, and no one could snatch it. However, the four big families disdained to do the dirty work of smuggling and selling in the dark. But the four big families didn't give up on the gray income business, but looked for local representatives. For example, Third Master Een was the underground leader supported by the Yn family. The other three big families supported different people because of their different businesses. In this aspect, the Yn family did the best job. The Ouyang family had always been lukewarm, and they had never found a suitable candidate. Therefore, they had to arrange the family's young disciples to take turns in this business. This year, it was Ouyang Ju's turn. He carefully selected for half a year and finally found a body refining master. Today, he brought this master to compete for the fertile land in the northern region. If the Ouyang family could take the northern region, they would be able to share the limelight with the Yn family in terms of gray income. The master brought by Ouyang Ju was called Iron Eagle. At this time, he was standing behind Ouyang Ju, with a pair of sharp eyes like an eagle looking for food in the sky. Ouyang Ju and Iron Eagle had exchanged pointers before, and he was unexpectedly not Iron Eagle's opponent. Iron Eagle's cultivation was one level lower than his, only at the early stage of the Qi gathering. After the fight, Ouyang Ju realized how terrifying the actual combat power of a body refiner was in the early stage. No wonder all the soldiers in the army were body refiners. Only then would they have enough strength to deal with the nether ghosts and ghost beasts. The highlight of today's event was the competition between the various major forces with their own experts. Whoever won all their opponents would become the leader of the northern region. Ouyang Ju was very confident in Iron Eagle's strength. This guy's strength had already reached the peak of martial arts and entered the master realm. The difference in strength between him and a foundation establishment cultivator was very small. The first few matches were just to adjust the atmosphere. The main event had yet to begin. The Shadow Serene Workshop, as the number one underground force, naturally became the organizer. The Shadow Secluded Workshop only did its own business and expanded its influence. It had always been a bystander to the disputes between the local powers. You can divide your cake, I'll just watch. As for my business, no one can take it away. The items sold in the Shadow Serene Square were never minerals or spiritual wood, but semi-finished products and finished products. To put it bluntly, the Shadow Serene Workshop was a processing plant and sales platform. Raw materials were not part of its business, so it would not compete for them. However, the Shadow Serene Workshop needed the stability of the local underground forces. This would be beneficial for their business. Otherwise, it would only be chaotic. Therefore, the Shadow Serene Workshop took the lead and used the name of the Black Market Fist to invite the various forces to compete. Whoever had the ability would take over the northern region. There was no need to make a big fuss here. The casualties were also limited. It was just a competition between a few top experts. There was no need for a group fight to minimize the losses of the various forces. In the future, there would not be any hatred because of this. In the arena, a loss was a loss. A win was a win. The winner was the king and the loser was the bandit. If you agree to a bet, you must accept your loss. Ouyang Ju and the others had just stood there for a while when the young woman who had served Huang Jiran, when Yuan, also came over. As soon as she came over, she said enthusiastically to Ouyang Ju, "Young Master Ju, your box has been arranged. Please come with me." Ouyang Ju nodded. Looking at Yuan's graceful figure, he could not help but feel a little restless. However, he quickly suppressed this restlessness. Even he, Ouyang Ju, could not easily touch the people of the Shadow Serene Workshop. The owner of the Shadow Serene Workshop was Old Monster Yuanying. He could overturn the Ouyang family with a single finger. When Ouyang Ju came in, he saw Wen Yuanyuan receiving Huang Jiran. His mind moved slightly and he asked a few questions in a low voice. When Yuanyuan saw that Ouyang-ju was a little interested in Huang Jiran, so she told him the process of receiving Huang Jiran and Li Daochong. When Ouyang-ju heard this, he immediately understood that Huang Jiran came to the black market boxing arena to get an unlimited purchase right so that she could buy the materials she wanted. Knowing the thoughts of the beauty, things were much easier. Ouyang-ju immediately invited Huang Jiran. Ran, it's a mess down there. Why don't you come with me to the box to watch the battle? Huang Jiran was just about to refuse when Ouyang-ju continued, those who can enter the box are VIPs. The amount of the bet can be lowered appropriately. 1 million is enough. When Huang Jiran heard this, she glanced at Li Daochong and asked, Brother Li, do you want to go to the box to watch? Li Daochong, who had been unable to lock onto the death aura, glanced at the row of boxes above the seating area. He thought for a moment and said, Okay. Li Daochong wanted to test it from above. Perhaps the accuracy would be higher this way. Yi Hong and the others were very displeased with Li Daochong's arrogant attitude when he wanted to enjoy it. He was obviously taking advantage of them, but he actually boasted shamelessly and put on an expression of reluctance. Was this good? What did he mean by okay? It was too okay. Under the lead of Wen Yuanyuan, they went up to the second floor and entered the box. There were a total of 4 boxes around the ring. They were called boxes, but in fact they were open platforms, located in the north, south, east, and west. There were only 2 seats on the platform. Ouyang-ju sat down and said, Ran, sit next to me. Huang Jiran said, Brother Li, sit down. When these words came out, Ouyang-ju and the others were stunned. They had seen that Huang Jiran seemed to value this country bumpkin very much. But they didn't expect that she would take the initiative to let him sit. He was just a country bumpkin. Was he worthy? Huang Jiran was a famous cold beauty in the circle. She didn't like to talk or smile, and was not close to anyone. Could it be that Huang Jiran had been taken down by this country bumpkin and cooked rice? Otherwise, how could someone as cold as Huang Jiran be so humble? I'm not sitting, Li Daochong replied ungratefully. From the moment he stepped into the box, he had spread out his telekinesis again to capture the faintly discernible death aura. He didn't want to be distracted at all. Ouyang-ju's face was livid. He invited the beauty to sit, but she actually took the initiative to let that country bumpkin sit. He tolerated this, but the country bumpkin said in a stiff tone that he wasn't sitting. Wasn't this F***king showing off? Ran, may I know which family this friend is from? Ouyang-ju was angry, but he couldn't vent it in front of Huang Jiran, so he asked. Brother Li is not a local. Huang Jiran knew that Li Daochong didn't want others to talk too much about him, so she simply replied and stood aside. In the end, she didn't sit down. Ouyang-ju was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He could only sit alone without a beauty to accompany him. Yi Hong and the other rich young ladies deliberately kept a distance from Li Daochong, not wanting to get close to him. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.